There we go.
I'm writing my bits here, so these are my
There we
comedy
go.
bits.
We're live. We're live on YouTube. We're live on Rockfin.
Well, this is all. I'm studying you for my comedy bits, so I'm trying to figure out because I'm doing a gay character. I'm trying to figure out kind of method acting of what it's like.
Meth head acting, yeah. Now, like I said before, Jay, like the meth stuff, you should keep that out of the acting. You can do acting, but you don't have to be a meth head actor.
Method man acting because you like the rappers. You like the
METHOD.
Do you like the Method Man, Tristan?
Man, but Jay's bitter because I introduced him to Mac Dre, and he's now realized that the peak the peak of all music was in the hyphy scene, and he missed out on it being
It was
from
the
the
Bay
South.
Area scene with E40 and
Bay
Mac Dre.
Area. All right, bigots. You got to do the Daniel. I've traveled across half of our great state to be here today with you.
That's pretty good, yeah.
I'm here with my partner, JW, and we are going to discuss a great movie today.
That's a good one. That's a good impression.
It's kind of an easy voice to do, right? Like the Daniel Day-Lewis as Daniel Plainview. It's not the hardest one. But we're doing There Will Be Blood today, guys. We almost did it last night. Had a little delay due to a bit of boomer tech issues, but we're good today. Got Jay Dyer here. No need to introduce him. The diva, the big, bright, shining star of the internet. Another PTA reference there. Paul Thomas Anderson's movie, There Will Be Blood.
The Big Dipper, some have called me. That's one of the stars. I don't know if you know about the constellations or whatever, but are you into astrology and all that shit? You want your give me to your horoscope?
My twin flame is, so by extension. So yeah, I'm excited to do this one. This has been a long time coming. We talked about this a few weeks ago. Finally on it now. What do you think about Paul Thomas Anderson in general? He's kind of one of my favorite directors.
Yeah, there's some really good ones. I mean, Magnolia is a classic.
Yes.
I watched. I think he did the one. Did he do Maps to the Stars, or is that someone else?
Maps to the Stars.
That was pretty good too.
I don't know. We don't really look at maps as like a positive thing here, Jay. I know you know. What's this sigh?
I'm trying to look and see. No, I'm sorry. That's David Cronenberg. Never mind.
Well, the first one I saw from him was Magnolia. That was one of my favorite movies when I first saw it. It was on like Showtime or HBO back in the day.
He did The Master too. The Master was good.
The Master was good, but I've only seen it once. I really want to revisit it. It was hard. It was a hard one to watch because it's kind of a brutal character study of like very self-destructive people.
I didn't care for Boogie Nights.
You didn't? Why not? What was about Boogie Nights that you didn't like?
I just typically, again, I know that you're living the gay lifestyle. I'm trying to not live it, but avoid it. So, movies about men with large weenuses is just not my thing. But Licorice Pizza, I haven't watched that.
That sounds like something you would like, Licorice Pizza. Oh. Some of the audience knows what I'm getting at.
Are you going after
talking about maps and pizza? I mean, I don't know what's up with this.
Are you going after my palate?
Well, but let's go back to Boogie Nights. So I thought Boogie Nights, I always assumed it would be a lame movie just because of the subject matter.
Yeah.
But I think Boogie Nights has got a lot of redeeming qualities.
I saw it at the time, and all I remember thinking was Heather Graham's hot. That's the only thing.
That's the thing. When it came out, I was so young that I revisited it around when the time when There Will Be Blood came out, and I actually really enjoyed Boogie Nights. I mean, I think it's worth revisiting. It's hard movie to recommend because the subject matter it is talking about the 1970s porno industry. But man, Mark Wahlberg's really good in that film, and the writing is pretty on point. And it's a critique of that industry. It's not a
Mark is Mark Wahlberg.
Mark Wahlberg.
Oh shit! I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
This whole time I thought it was two different dudes.
Yeah. No,
so my favorite actor is also my favorite rapper.
Not the greatest rapper though. Clearly, I thought I was your favorite rapper.
Second ratest rapper.
Second ratest rapper. You can't even give a compliment without underhandedly insulting.
I will maybe revisit that when I'm.
Maybe we should review it one time because it's in the Paul Thomas Anderson fashion. It has those same themes of the abandonment of the father, the breakup of the family, and surrogate family. is kind of a big theme in that film. And it also is, it is a critique of that industry. It shows the dark side of it and the acting in it. And I mean, there's some characters in there. What's his name? What's Quiz Kid Donnie? What's that actor's name from Magnolia? Quiz Kid Donnie, the older character.
I know you're talking about. I don't remember that.
He's so good. William H. Macy.
Yeah.
He's so good in Boogie Nights.
He has another classic that it was overlooked. The critics didn't like it. I actually thought it was a really good movie, and the book is good too. Did you see Inherent Vice?
You know what? I got to revisit that. I've seen it, but I think I was half asleep when I was watching it. I didn't get to get deep into it, but I liked it. There was a lot in there. I mean, it's a Pynchon novel that's adapted.
Correct. Yeah, it's really good, and it's got conspiracy, California conspiracy themes in it. So
yeah.
And Joaquin Phoenix plays Doc very well. So it's a good. I thought the film was great. So
yeah,
I don't know why people hated it.
Magnolia, dude. Magnolia is so good. I mean, Magnolia. Tom Cruise's character, Frank T.J. Mackey. He's like early manosphere red pill guru.
Yeah, I was just reading the other day that Frank T.J. Mackey is actually based on the Ross guy. That's the granddaddy of the PUA stuff. It's the Ross guy who studied NLP and like social dynamics that influence mystery and Strauss. So the game and mystery method come from the Ross guy, who's the basis for Frank T.J. Mackey.
I love that character. That was such a great character. Watching There Will Be Blood made me want to revisit Magnolia. I feel like Boogie Nights is hard to recommend to people just because there are some scenes that are a little bit wacky, and the end scene is kind of nutty.
Yeah, same with like Eyes Wide Shut too.
Yeah, it's the Eyes Wide Shut type movie where it's like it's amazingly written film. There's a lot in there, but it's not one you'd ever watch with your kids or something like that, or recommend.
Did you see Babylon? I feel the same way about Babylon.
No.
With
Margot
Robbie and Brad Pitt.
Oh, okay. I haven't even heard of that one.
It's kind of like the same type of analysis of the industry, except it's just of Hollywood in general, and it's I thought it was pretty good. Like the way it describes the whole history of Hollywood and its collapse and degeneration is a big part of the movie. But again, a lot of people hated that movie. So
I think with Boogie Nights, it really is a critique on Hollywood too. I mean, it's a critique of the lowest dregs of Hollywood, right?
Yeah. In Hollywood, it kind of ends. Excuse me, in Babylon, it ends with Hollywood kind of becoming more and more of a prawn type of industry.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a Tobey Maguire character at the end who's like this mogul, and he basically has these underground, just disgusting, the most depraved stuff you could think of. Like they have these dungeon parties underneath LA, which I think is signifying like the underground of Hollywood and Los Angeles.
The Illuminati. These people that go to the Illuminati parties, you know what I'm saying? And we don't know what goes on in there, but some of us do. There was two black men invited to an Illuminati thing, okay? One of them was me and one of them was Ludacris. And one of them came away with a $200 million contract. It was not me. And the other one came out a clone. They done cloned that N-word. The other one is an arch degree Mason of the 55th degree, and he ain't got no pointy sideburns, okay? If you understand. They done cloned him, but they messed up. They couldn't get the sideburns. They couldn't even get that right. When they clone him. It shows you just how depraved the white man is, and Jacob and his minions, they can't even clone proper sideburns on a brother. Listen, all I'm saying is every one of these brothers got an ugly, ugly white wife. Why is that? It's a ritual. This is an occult ritual. In the 43rd degree of arch blue masonry, you have to bag a ugly white bitch. The 33rd degree of the double golden arches of the McDonald's degree, okay? All right. Get my camera focused on here. So yeah, dude, this was a fun one to watch. I almost went back and watched it again. There's so much here. Like the historical context of the film, I feel is pretty important. I'd like to kind of weave that into the analysis today. But maybe we can start out just talking about where'd my notes go? I'm trying to find my notes here. The Illuminati have stolen my notes. They have made me forget which notebook I wrote them in.
Yeah, I didn't realize that this was more of a kind of an independent art house type of film, but you kind of don't notice it because you get so lost in the really intense music and production value that you see in the movie. But it was entered into a lot of like Austin film festivals and whatnot at the time, I guess, and won quite a bit of awards. So it's more of an auteur, art house film than it is like a huge cinematic blockbuster type production. But I think
It's not a high budget epic.
Yeah, it
there
did well
aren't
at the box office, though, if I recall.
Yeah, there's only a few set pieces, right? Like the oil derricks are kind of the main most expensive set pieces. The rest of it shot relatively low budget. I mean, I'm sure Daniel Day-Lewis probably had to get paid pretty good. I mean, everybody remembers Daniel Day-Lewis's performance. I mean, I can't think of a better acted character. Like, I can't think of another character that was better done, that like seared himself more in the viewer's mind than this character. I mean, something about it, you can't put your finger on exactly what it is about the performance. And it's kind of a perfect performance for what this character is. And a lot of people remember him, but I think the film, it's hard to say it's underrated, because I think there's pretty much unanimity that this is a great film. Like, you don't hear anybody saying like, "Oh, that was overrated. That movie was crap." I think it's definitely, it's got a Western aesthetic. It's kind of it does have that almost Sergio Leone aesthetic with a lot of the long shots of facial features, close-up shots of the characters' faces, micro expressions, sweeping shots of the landscape, which is sort of a character within the film itself.
The music was the thing that stood out to me, though. This because I haven't seen this movie since 2007. I remember seeing it in the theater when it came out. I liked it at the time, and then watching it this time, I was really impressed with just how unsettling the music is constantly leaving you. Like every scene is in some way villainous, and that makes sense because the most unique thing in my view about this movie is that there's no protagonist or hero. It's a movie about two competing villains, which is unique.
Yeah, two competing villains, and both of them are very human. I'd say Eli is a more overt villain. He's less humanized than Daniel Day-Lewis's character. There's so much intricacy to Daniel Day-Lewis's character, because although you see him lying and manipulating, the lies and manipulations of Daniel Day-Lewis, they're presented in a way to where his character isn't just... I don't think he's just a pure sociopath. He's not just a pure psychopath. He's a man who actually does show empathy and love at certain times in the film.
Yeah, he goes from having humanity and having a vice that he's weak towards, to completely being taken over by that vice. And so the movie is his progression towards becoming completely possessed by that vice.
And it's tastefully done too, where it's not like Batman villain style. You see him with small temptations, right? I think one of the first temptations that comes is, well, you see his virtues first, right? I mean, the first scene in the film, you mentioned the music. You know that it's actually the guitarist from Radiohead was a composer that did the whole soundtrack. I forget the guy's name.
I didn't know that, no.
Yeah, he did the entire soundtrack, and I think he did.
It reminded me of the music in Ari Aster's movies like Midsommar or Hereditary, where the music itself, Jamie said the music is its own character that's a villain.
Yeah, I mean, the first part of the score that you hear when it shows that kind of barren California or Nevada desert landscape, it's like stringed instruments, right? It's like this really jarring violin that feels like imposing violence or impending violence, almost like a Hitchcockian sound, or Kubrick. Reminds me of Kubrick a little bit.
That's very Kubrick, exactly.
Yeah, and that opening scene, all you see is just barren desert, and then you zoom in, and it's got this horror film music, and the film is very much a horror film. It's not a bloody, there's not a lot of violence in the movie. There are some violent scenes. The end scene is the most overtly violent. There's accidental violence where in the oil part of that. Yeah, that beam falling on the man. But there's not a lot of violence, but it is a horror film. Like, it's a very frightening thing to witness the soul of this man who's a tortured person, right? He's not just just an evil villain. He's somebody who's clearly had a lot of pain. He's experienced isolation. He fears rejection and deception. Like he's somebody who you see him as he takes these blows by some of the other characters around him, that it drags him further and further into that vice, into his passions, which end up really, really consuming him in the end. But yeah, you see him alone in the bottom of this mine. It's kind of like a little pit mine, and he's digging silver ore out of it. Like the first scene is just him swinging an axe. He's swinging this pickaxe, and you see the light from above, right? So the darkness below. He's in this pit. He's in the darkness. He's in the bowels of the earth, and he's doing it's a very manly job that he works, right? He's not just some, rich kid businessman with triple bracket daddy.
It's very common, as you know, in literature and in film, to utilize kind of recurring archetypal patterns and scenes and imagery. And so the underworld, or being in a cave, or being underground, very common. It refers to the realm of the dead. It refers to Hades. It refers to hell, to death. And that's a recurring thing that we'll see throughout this movie, symbolically speaking, with him, breaking the ground, breaking the dirt. When he murders somebody, we'll find that the blood that comes out of the ground as a result of his plumbing the depths of Hades is oil. The blood here is the oil. It's not the blood of the lamb. That's the blood that Eli tries to preach and pretend that he represents. And Daniel Day-Lewis believes in another blood, as will come, may be made clear later. But I like that you mentioned that he's alone down there, because he actually says at one point, "I just want to be alone." And his greed and envy, when it completely envelops him, it leads him to that last, point where it's just him and one other competitor. And he realizes that he's going to have to get rid of Eli to be alone. And that's really the message, one of the messages of the movie.
Yeah, the isolation, abandonment and isolation. There are themes that you see throughout the film, which, I titled this, what was the title again? Abandonment of God, the Protestantism to Nihilism Pipeline. Now, it's a film it's exploring... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was talking to Jamie, that's why I muted it. Go ahead.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, I thought you accidentally had it muted. Yeah, so the nihilism to Protestantism pipeline, you've got these two competing ideologies here. The film starts out at the end of the 19th century. The end of the film, I think it's like 1921, maybe the last year that's represented in the film. But it's a very specific time in American history when the Industrial Revolution is kind of full speed ahead. The railroads are being consolidated.
It's the rise of the robber baron.
Exactly. So you've got Daniel Day-Lewis, he's not a Rockefeller. He's not an Astor. He's kind of a salt of the earth, American worker. Like he's out there trying to make his own, the manifest destiny idea that you hear about from the 19th century. He's out there trying to make his fortune, trying to carve out his little place in the world by the sweat of his brow, right? And he's, his work is physical. It's not just intellectual work. He's digging in the ditches. He's getting silver out of the ditches. And yeah, let me got my notes here. So you get introduced to Daniel Day-Lewis and then who becomes his adopted son, H.W. So there's an accident. It skips forward after the first scene. It shows him prospecting for silver, and then he's obviously a few years later moved on to the oil industry. And they're in these wells just digging by hand with buckets and using pulleys to manually pull the buckets out of the ditch. Jay mentioned the blood in the film. Oil obviously represents blood throughout the film. What I like about how we did this too is this movie came out in 2007, so it's kind of the height of the Iraq War. This was during one of the big surges, yep. Right, when a lot of our brothers, sisters, cousins are being sent off to Iraq. So there was a lot of talk about no blood for oil was the anti-war chant going back to like 2003 when they were talking about going into Iraq. But the film isn't. I saw there was a couple bad take reviews. It's always interesting to watch other reviews of some of these movies, and some of the takes are so dumb. Like, that's a critique of the patriarchy, or it's about global warming.
Watch other people's critiques. They're usually just total cringe.
There was one I saw one, and it was like, well, something that nobody's talking about is how this is about climate change, and like he's digging the oil out of the ground, and the blood of the earth is the oil, and then like he causes fires,
which dying because you're bleeding her dry.
It's like, what I like about the movie is a movie about the oil industry. It is a movie about robber barons. It's a movie where there's the background noise of crony capitalism, and there is a theme of the selling your soul for to gain the world but sell your soul, but it's not done in a preachy, lame way. There's no like liberal hidden messages in this film at all.
Yeah, I think you're right to point to the rise of the Rockefeller family as a great example. I didn't read who P.T. Anderson was basing it on. It has to in some way relate to Granddaddy Rockefeller, because in the authorized biography of the Rockefellers, they note that he was often accused of, and probably was a mountebank, right? He was a con man. And so he was actually kind of a traveling snake oil salesman kind of dude. Like, he would roll his cart into town and try to sell you, tonics and shit like that.
Yeah, so, William Bill, they called him Devil Bill, and he was literally like a snake oil salesman, the first snake oil salesman. Oh shoot! You still
so those kinds of people, I think, is who is represented here as the Rockefellers, but before they're Rockefellers, when they're the con man, the carnival barker kind of person who's trying to figure out where the next big market's going to be in order to stake their billions. And the attitude and the type of person it takes to get to that level is exactly what I think you're pointing out.
And what's interesting too is the 19th century, in the middle of the 19th century, the late 19th century, the Rockefeller clan, it wasn't just John D. Rockefeller, right? You had William and Frank Rockefeller, and they were commercial beef ranchers who were working on replacing the old buffalo hunting lands that, the plains, the Great Plains regions were. There were tons of buffalo, and in order to get the railroads in, you had to get rid of those buffalo. You could not have these herds of 10,000 head of bison just romping through these vast landscapes if you want to have a successful, long-lasting railroad. I mean, they're going to trample the tracks. They're going to put a lot of this infrastructure in danger. So it's interesting how the Rockefeller family, it wasn't just John D. Rockefeller out there creating his, railroad industry, consolidating the oil industry. He was doing that. Of course, he was financed as well. I think a lot of people forget. Rockefeller isn't this just, pure rags to riches story. There's a lot going on to get these railroads financed. There's a lot going on to get these buyouts of all these small companies.
Well, yeah, and they famously create Pinkerton Security, which goes and kills people, takes land, company towns. That's an old Rockefeller thing. So I think what we're supposed to think is that Daniel's going to build a company town.
He promises this. He says, I think they're one of the great. I cannot imagine that anybody in this great country can go without bread. We need education. Yeah, right. We'll have education. So he sells, in his second sales pitch, which his sales pitches, I love those two scenes. The first scene where he dialogues is his sales pitch, where he has his son, who he adopted, his son H.W., who was his father had died in an accident. And you get to see the humanity of Daniel Plainview's character as he adopts this child. You see his pain as he's looking at this at this little lonesome child, the baby in the basket, which is kind of a little reminiscent of Moses, kind of some biblical thematics there. And he adopts this child. Then the next scene, he's on the railroad. He's on a train. And it's this beautiful scene, and there's no dialogue or anything. He's just sitting there with this baby, looking him in the eyes, and kind of you could see his pain, you can see his fear, you really read that, the emotion on his face, and it's so well done in a dialogueless scene by Daniel Day-Lewis. Oh, but I forgot the scene right before that though, when he's Daniel Plainview, the character, he's under this oil derrick. It's not even an oil derrick. I mean, they're digging by hand, and they puncture the ground, and this huge spout of oil comes out, and the oil blasts out of the ground, and he gets completely drenched in it. be basically like a baptism in oil. So Daniel is baptized in this oil, and then another worker, who might have been the father of the child, or it may have been somebody else, but this man anoints the child on the forehead with the oil. He puts his finger in it.
Yeah, that was in my notes, that they basically did an oil chrismation, but it's not oil of anointing in the chrismation ceremony. It's the oil of Mama Earth.
Exactly. And it's the way it's done, like the flow of it, the cinematography. There's not even dialogue for 15 minutes. The whole first 15 minutes, the only words you hear is Daniel says no when he falls he falls and basically breaks his leg, and then has to crawl in the first scene. He has to crawl through the desert, which you don't see, but it's indicated that he crawl through the desert to go and sell his silver. Then from the rest of the film, he's got this great limp that adds so much to his character. This broken, twisted man. What were you gonna say, Jay?
Oh, the father-son imagery there. You notice that it's important for his character that it's not his biological son, and the Christian imagery is mirrored too, because obviously in Christian theology you have the relationship of the father to the son, and here the father-son relationship begins in an amicable way. He does seem to have a real concern for this orphaned boy now, but the love is not for a biological son. It's for a son that he's adopted. And then when we see him at his first business meeting, we find out that he doesn't actually he doesn't tell the truth. He makes up a story that this is his widowed wife's son. So we kind of know that now he's using a false narrative, a legend about himself, to sell himself as this caring, compassionate man, which he thinks is good for business, because then people will pity him and feel like, oh well, the poor guy's got he's a widower, which is not true. And that's relevant because we aren't ever told why he doesn't have why there's no wife.
That's a good point. Yeah,
and that's in other words, we know from the outset that he actually doesn't seem to have love or the ability to have a relationship with another person in that way. So Daniel concocts a opportunistic story that would work for business reasons.
I think I like how the subtlety of that too, though, because in the scene, so he's doing his sales pitch to a family, and the woman looks real. She's kind of looking down her nose at him. She's kind of looking at him. She got that stink face. She's making that thiz face, and she tells him, she's like, "Where's your wife, Daniel?" And he goes, the way he said it, I love this detail, because they did it in a way with the dialogue where he might not be technically lying, because he goes,
yeah, he could have really lost a wife.
She passed away. His mother passed away in childbirth. It's just me and my son now. So, you could see how he could justify this to himself as, well, I'm telling the truth. What's the point of me going into this? His son doesn't know that he was a bastard child. His son, and he may have, the reason that he may not have told his son that he was, adopted. I mean, what I could see from the character, like his perspective.
Right. I think we already realized that he's worded it in a clever way to where it still works for the optics.
Of course. No, but he does it in a way where his conscience might be able to be slightly appeased, right? Like he didn't tell an overt lie of like, oh, she was abducted by aliens, and it's like she was taken away by a band of Indians, and my son H.W. killed 5 of the Indians, and here he did it in a way where it's kind of, it's ambiguous. You're kind of wondering, all right, how much of this is calculated? How much of this is him trying to fool himself, protect his son from the pain of understanding this?
He uses the phrase, which is again also ambiguous. I'm a family man.
Of course. Which at that point,
not a family man in the sense of having a wife and a biological son. So.
Of course, but he does have his son. He's not his biological son. And if it were a virtuous adoption, which I think what I love about it is it might have started out like he really cared about this boy. I mean, it shows him.
I think he did care. I think he felt like, the guy died on his dime as a worker.
Yeah.
There's nobody else to take care of this boy. And he probably also thought, I need somebody to hand my dynasty down to, right? He's always wanted to build this dynasty, and when the fake brother shows up, he thinks for a while that maybe this fake brother will be a better fit than HW. And then he finds out, of course, that he's not. So, yeah, I think there is this searching for the son to be the potential future heir of the dynasty. So he does want that, but he only wants that in his own image and according to his own idea. If you remember when, at the very end of the film, when HW has gotten older, he says, "You never really loved me." And then Daniel Day-Lewis says something like, "I loved my idea of you," which means he didn't really love him.
Yeah, I love the way that they do the ambiguity. I wish I had actually. There's a transcript. There's a site that you can. Where is that? There's a site that has transcripts of like any movie, so you can kind of. It's not the script, but it's actually just the transcript of the movie. But yeah, that end scene. I mean, there's such a heart-wrenching scene with HW there. Oh no, wait, you disappeared for a second. Here, you're back. Okay. I know it's because I minimized your window.
No, I literally bilocated, so I have the powers.
That's amazing.
That Charles Manson has to bilocate. So
you have
Charles Manson. I won't exercise those powers anymore and freak you out. I'm sorry, my bad.
Yeah, Charles Mansonic succession. But yeah, no, I think the ambiguity of the character and like the slow slide into losing more of his humanity is what's so powerful about the film. Because I think he truly didn't. I think it's shown that he didn't calculate his leveraging of HW from the very beginning, but it's something that you'd be tempted into at every step of the way, right? You've got this temptation for ambition, which he discusses in that great scene when he's talking.
Well, exactly. Yeah. He's gradually coming to see people more and more as tools to be used rather than as people.
Yeah, yeah, and the HW character, I mean, to see this child, this helpless baby, and to start out like truly loving him, and I think even in the middle of the film, like he shows genuine compassion towards the Mary character, right? Remember, there's this character Mary, who ends up marrying HW later, and HW sitting around the fire with Daniel, and he tells his dad, he says, Mary says her dad beats her when she doesn't pray. And you could see, he just kind of think about it. He looks at him and he's like, she's the little one, she's the youngest one. And he's like, yeah. And then later on, when Daniel Day-Lewis' character is a little bit tipsy, he starts to, throughout the film, you see the alcohol become more and more of a character or a part of Daniel's character. And that's actually present from the beginning. Forgot to mention in the first scene with him and the baby. The baby's crying. Daniel's covered in muck. It's at the end of a hard day of physical work at this oil well. And he's got this bottle of like goat's milk or something. And then he's pouring liquor, whiskey or brandy on the tip of the bottle, and you see that there's prominence of the bottle of liquor being near Daniel throughout the film, and it's real tastefully done, his kind of alcoholism and his using of the alcohol as this crutch, especially when he's in emotional pain, yes. Which he is. Right. Like, he's not just a character that's cold and dead to the world, he's a character that's in consistent emotional pain. And it's implied that he had a very difficult childhood and a difficult relationship with his father as well. It's actually said when he's talking to his brother.
Exactly.
He's like, I know you didn't get along with our dad, and so he had this betrayal from his father. Obviously, maybe some abuse from his father, and right. But then that transfers into, of course, his new relationship where you never see him beating HW. He actually shows restraint when you would almost expect him to spank him, smack him.
That's a good point. He never does.
Yeah, he doesn't ever beat him. He playfully nudges him in kind of like a man-son kind of way in the very end of the film. Remember that last scene where it's like a flashback, and it shows HW's, he's got his hat, and Daniel wants his hat, and HW teases him, and there's this genuine emotion you see at that moment, like between Daniel Plainview's character and his son, where the boy is messing with his dad. Dad gets a little annoyed, but then the dad pulls him in and like fakes like he's going to spank him, but just gives him like a squeeze, It's like this real sweet moment. And then it cuts again to like maybe a minute later when HW wants more, he's trying to engage with his dad more. It's like a puppy jumping on his, its master's leg, like, play with me. And Daniel gives him this push away, and it's kind of a playful push, but at the same time, it's like this heart-wrenching moment because he pushes him away and walks towards the oil derrick. He's got work to take care of. So that's that theme right there of, choosing this desire for his drive, this almost animalistic drive that he's got, right? He's like a wolf character or something. He's got this insatiable hunger for this insatiable ambition. And that kind of ties in with, maybe we can jump in. I'd love to I'd love to kick it off to you and have you talk a little bit about this concept of like the Protestant work ethic and what that stems from philosophically and theologically. Because Daniel Plainview's character, although he's at this post-Christian phase in his life, right? He's cynical about God. He doesn't believe in God. He's even makes some Reddit atheist style statements at some points in the film, which it's not cornily done. It's actually real tasteful, right? He goes, the false prophet Eli, he whoops him, beats his ass, and throws him on the ground, and he's like, why? He's like, I thought you were a prophet. Why don't you come over and heal my son and make him hear again? Can't you do that? So you could see in that moment too that it's like he's mad at God for the suffering that his son's experiencing. But is it because it's a narcissistic thing of like, I want my son to be my partner, or does he really love him, or both?
Both Eli and Daniel, back and forth throughout the film, force each other to admit truths. That's a recurring theme where when one of them has the upper hand, their satisfaction comes in the humiliation of getting the other one to publicly, in certain cases, admit what's really going on in their mind. And that for them is like the ultimate humiliation, is to get them to say the truth. Because,
like a confession, like a public confession, right?
Yeah, but it's done not for any actual purpose of amending things. It's done for the purpose of, as you said, display,
dominance.
When Eli has Daniel confessing his sins in the church, that's just so that Eli can humiliate Daniel to get him back for when he humiliated him by smacking him around.
Yeah. And the loss of God for Daniel Plainview ends up with him embracing. I mean, instead of for Eli, it's kind of like religion is his business, right? Like Eli is trying to build this church.
Oh, absolutely. They're both businessmen, exactly.
So yeah, Eli's religion is his business, and then for Daniel, he makes business his religion, right? Like, so they're exactly. Foil characters in a lot of ways, and are kind of Eli is almost like he's like a lesser version of Daniel in some ways that Daniel despises and looks down on and resents, because Eli is a con man. Daniel Day-Lewis's character, Daniel Plainview sees him for what he is. He sees him as a con man, as a snake, and he sees him from the very beginning. The moment he lays his eyes on him, you could see the contempt. Yeah. So he wants to destroy him the minute he sees him. He's like, this little filthy thing is in my way, and he's a liar and he's a snake. But I think it's almost the writing. It's so well written because it's kind of like almost this Dostoevsky level character study of Plainview's character. Yep. I mean, P.T. Anderson doesn't have the depth and the theological profundity of Dostoevsky, but as far as like American art, American cinema, I would say that his films, Magnolia, The Master as well, they're deep character studies.
Yeah,
that are.
I think it's a perfect encapsulation of church and state in America and Americanism. You might say, well, where's the state in this? Well, I think Daniel Plainview is the corporate state / private interests. I mean, the private interests, since the rise of the Rockefellers, of course, have pretty much controlled the state in America. It's a functionary of that power structure. So this is a great critique of the American ideas of what the church is and what the state is. But it's told from the vantage point of these two con men who are basically conniving to see who has the real power over people. Daniel represents power that comes through physical control. Eli represents power that comes through, people's ideology and mental perspectives. And that's why there's this play on the oil, which is the real tangible blood that Daniel controls, versus the power of the blood that Eli tries to get Daniel to submit to by coming into his weird Protestant cult. But you're right also to go to the history of evangelicalism in America and the Great Awakenings and the long lineage of Protestant sects coming out of older medieval sects and even patristic era groups. The Montanists famously were the charismatics of the first, second, third, fourth century of the early church. But yeah, I mean, these movements pop back up all throughout history. I did a lecture some years ago on a big fat book by Malcolm Lambert on the history of medieval heresies. And you'll notice that it's exact same ideas that pop up in the medieval heretics, the Cathari, the Bogomils, the Waldensians. And then it kind of that ends with a figure named Thomas Müntzer, and the Müntzer rebellion in Germany. Yeah. And Müntzer had communist ideas. So his idea was that the true apostolic church is a communist church where everything is held in common.
Including later on, he got to hold all their wives in common.
Including wives.
Of course.
I'm not positive if they were charismatic, but what happens is that as the Reformation commences, you get what's called the classical reformers, and this is Luther, Calvin, and Zwingli, who still believe in a lot of order and structure, and they're typically supported by various Christian states, kings, elector, palatine people. But then you get what's called the Radical Reformation. And the Radical Reformation is where we get Anabaptists, Amish, Mennonites. They come out of this, and charismatics. There's not any one single direct lineage of groups that are charismatics, but the Pietists, the Quietists, the Quakers, they all have these elements of charismatic expression before the modern charismatic movement, which kicks off in, I think, Los Angeles or San Francisco in the late 1800s. That's today's Foursquare gospel movement. What we know as the charismatic movement comes out of that. But there were predecessors to that in American Christianity. And this goes back to different great awakenings that Tristan was talking about, particularly under the period of Jonathan Edwards, the famous Princeton preacher, theologian, Congregationalist, Calvinist. He was preaching the famous sermon, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. And as he preached this, there began to be these manifestations of people who were overcome with tremendous fear, because the whole sermon is all about how bad hell will be and how, God is just waiting to drop everybody over into hell. It's a pretty hellacious sermon. And so for the Puritan mindset, right, when Puritans were hearing this, they started freaking out, and they started having these, actual, rolling in the aisles, charismatic gibberish, tongues or what. So they would have these manifestations. And then the question became, was this a real revival and a real awakening? So you got this split in the Presbyterian church known as the Old Lights and the New Lights. The New Light Presbyterians were the ones that were moving in the direction of this charismatic movement. Old Lights were the ones who frowned on this and said, no, we need to be orderly and, worship in the classical reformed, I forget there's a term for this that Calvinists have, the regulative principle of worship, as that's called. So the charismatics of that time, I think this was a really excellent portrayal of the proto-charismatic movement.
It's like it's this time when there were these tent revivals, right? Like this is during the third, they call it the Third Great Awakening, and this wasn't, at the time, these people weren't saying we are in the Third Great Awakening. This is more of a later academic term.
A later, historical.
So just kind of breaking up these Protestant movements into this idea of awakenings. But the Third Great Awakening, I think this was like 1860s until the early 1920s. And it actually ended up with the Pentecostal movement. The Pentecostal movement was just the ultimate crystallization of this. Sorry, I know you got me all excited thinking about these crazy Pentecostals and stuff. Who, the Pentecostal movement, although a lot of people laugh at it, this is very important for American culture, even American pop culture and rock and roll culture. Now, Jay has pointed out that Elvis was really influenced by a lot of the Pentecostal preachers, the way he danced, the way he moved, characters like Jim Jones, right? Some of these crazy cults, like these were the fruits of kind of the,
well, think about too, all of these big famous TV preachers, they all come out of the performative domain of charismatic Christianity, going back to Oral Roberts, Jimmy Swaggart, Jimmy Swaggart, Oral Roberts, Paul Crouch, TBN, Benny Hinn. Those are all people coming out of the Pentecostal / charismatic movement.
Yeah, and what you see now with like even a lot of the like the more cringe hip, like the hip, like hey, did you ever realize that like the church is not a building, dude? Church isn't a building,
Yeah,
bro.
this
It's
is like emergent church movement, the non-denominational mega church movements. I mean, all of those are
even like
kind
the
of
street
graphic.
preachers who are like, hey, let me see one of your legs is longer than
Well,
the other leg.
so
I'm gonna
here's the
give you a
thing:
miracle right now.
the prosperity gospel is directly out of the charismatic TV preachers. So you had in the 1960s and 70s the combination of the idea of the New Thought movement, Norman Vincent Peale, these kinds of positive thinking people. And then you got people latching onto that, giving it a Christian veneer, like Robert Schuller, the Crystal Cathedral. So this is a huge thing out in California. It became a very popular kind of proto prosperity gospel thing. And then you get the next phase of that with the people I'm talking about. Like, remember when Jimmy Swaggart was going to build a giant Christian theme park? Yeah, there's actually a movie that
I don't remember that. When was that?
There's a movie that told this story very well with Jessica Chastain, where she plays. Is it Jimmy Swaggart's wife? She plays the wife of one of those TV preachers. When they get the big pink hair and they go nuts.
I think
it's a really good movie.
You're talking about like really important historical figures, like the gemstone families. The gemstone.
This is like that, right? They're parodying, and I'm serious.
I'm joking. There's a show called The Righteous Gemstones, but yeah, that right. they're pointing to this really corny, gaudy prosperity gospel. Like, look at my Rolls Royce that the Lord gave me. Jesus needs me to have a private jet. These type of guys.
Yeah, but there's she plays Tammy Faye Baker. Jim Baker's who I couldn't think of. And if you go watch the Jessica Chastain movie, Eyes of Tammy Faye, that's actually a really good movie for illustrating everything that we're talking about, because she's the wife to Jim Baker. And when Jim Baker goes nuts as a charismatic TV preacher who gets millions of dollars, she's going to build a Christian theme park and all this stuff. She kind of takes over the ministry and becomes this big, girl boss CEO. But it's all in this period that we're talking about of the late 70s, early 80s. And what you begin to see is that the mindset of the TV preacher, who's the prosperity gospel preacher, it's a perfect melding of Daniel and Eli, right? Into like where we are today with these preachers. But yeah, anyway, the Eli character is another really good archetype for that Quaker, Puritan, proto-charismatic movement.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've got I don't know if you could see, I think you just see my camera, but I've got the screenshot of Daniel Plainview and Eli talking to each other there, and they are, they're really interesting foil characters, but they also kind of represent the same historical trajectory, right? Like Daniel Plainview has gotten to the point of rejecting the cynical, fake, con man, false Protestantism that Eli represents, and he's moved on to just, get yours in the world. Is basically a will to power worldview that he embraces. Now, I don't think he thinks about this much. I think he acts very. He's a really instinctual character. He's a
super pragmatist, and that's the American mindset of all of the robber barons, even back to the Rockefellers, is pragmatic, simplistic, naive. The world's very simple. Humans are motivated by basic drives: get money, get wealth, get alcohol, and that's the motivation. Even his name. A lot of times in literature, names signify and speak to the type of character that we're talking about. Daniel Plainview. He's just a total pragmatist. That is the philosophy of a lot of the American robber barons, is just pure pragmatism. There's no ideals. It's just pure pragmatic, what works right now. He sees Eli and he says right away, I recognize a fellow narcissistic con man.
Yeah. I'm trying to pull up. Yeah, I got so many thoughts on this right now too. There's this book that you and I had talked about before, Thy Will Be Done by Gerard Colby and Charlotte Dennett, and it's about the kind of the. Well, it's a very vast book. It's about intelligence agencies and private corporations using using Protestant missionary groups for economic and geopolitical purposes. There it is, right there.
My book is more my book is more of this book than your book. That's why I'm holding it up. I just want people to see that my book, my version is a superior version of your book.
You have a peasant paperback version. I'm not trying to judge you, but
you're right.
I'm not trying to judge your paperback book, but it's nothing that special, bro.
So basically, you're calling everybody in the audience poors, right? You're calling them poors who have to use paperbacks. Is that what you're saying?
You appeal to the unwashed masses in the audience here, the filthy unwashed masses in the chat. So this book in the first chapter, is it the first chapter, first or second chapter? It's just about the early life of Nelson Rockefeller, and this is the third generation of the Rockefeller clan, right? John D. Rockefeller Jr.'s children. He had was it Nelson, David, Lawrence, and what's the other one? There's two more, I think. You have 5 sons or 4 sons. The most prominent, Nelson, David, and Lawrence.
Shantae,
Deontay, and so yeah,
Deontay Rockefeller,
Chantel Rockefeller, Demoses Rockefeller, Jamoses, Dejarian Rockefeller, and
Lamont.
Yeah. But where'd that go? There's this interesting little passage here where it's talking about the characters of Raymond Fosdick and Reverend Harry Emerson Fosdick. Yes. So by the time Junior Rockefeller was really in charge of the fortune, and this is a classical Protestant family that was, I think the Rockefeller families in the early 20th century kind of,
they were
Baptist. They're very similar to like Daniel Plainview's character and Eli's character smashed together, right? Eli Sunday and Daniel Plainview are kind of the Rockefellers and to a certain extent, because they were a supposedly very religious Protestant family that believed in this idea of the Protestant work ethic and of, God's will is that you will subdue the earth. And even their palatial estates that they kept were representative of this, right? They were these like square, cut out, highly groomed, very unnatural pieces of property within the vast expanses of these plains and whatnot that they lived in, whether it was in Brazil or other areas in South America like Venezuela or in the U.S. They had these huge ranches, and they would just stamp these giant estates on them that were so manicured and almost unnatural, right? It kind of represents this it's like this Calvinistic version of what they think the utopian end state is. It's like the Calvinist version of what the Garden of Eden is, in this perfectly square, orderly place where there's no, that you don't have these natural forms.
Yeah, but it's even more so than that, even beyond. I mean, there's a Calvinist influence because there is this idea of the Protestant work ethic, which is, of course, Max Weber's famous book. And he was going back to the Puritan ethos and their idea of providential blessings would come to those who, have the hard work ethic, and
right. Let me just finish this thought real quick on the Fosdick characters, right? Because the Fosdick, Raymond Fosdick ended up running, to a great extent, the philanthropic endeavors of the family, and he was a lawyer, but his brother was the Reverend Harry Emerson Fosdick, and he was just a liberal theologian, like a very liberal theologian.
That's what I was going to say. So what happens is that the family, they're not even into Calvinism; they're more into Baptist ideas, of
higher criticism.
And this is why the Rockefellers for a long time supported the teetotaler. What's it called? Where you
pietism?
No, where you try to ban alcohol. The
temperance movement.
Temperance movement that was funded by the Rockefeller family, and so they have this idea of pragmatic Baptist values where the state, the public life, is totally divorced from your private religious life. So that's one of the key elements that. Granddaddy Rockefeller brought to the table, and like you're pointing out, he tried to give that same ethic to the sons and the daughters and whatnot. But there's a great chapter in the Rockefellers authorized biography. It's chapter 9, which goes into what you're talking about with the history of Fosdick, and basically they create the Riverside Church, which is really intended to be their own private religion. And he decides that it's at this moment when he creates the Riverside Church, he decides that he's no longer interested in the theological teachings of death, burial, resurrection. He says, just get rid of all of that and let's just have the basic general ecumenist principles. This is the birth of the ecumenist movement, because he realizes ultimately that this is what's good for business and for control. And this is when they get the idea to put the money into the World Council of Churches, the National Council of Churches. Those are all created by the Rockefeller family. This whole chapter is about that. And even to the point where he says, I need a new gospel that's actually fit for my global order. So he literally says he's going to change the gospel for his ecumenist New World Order purposes.
So you got it right there. The Protestantism to will to power nihilism pipeline embodied in these actions.
In fact, this is part of the reason also that the Council on Foreign Relations was created. He says that just as I created the CFR for government and influence of the family there, the World Council of Churches, National Council of Churches is that same type of thing for the religious realm. That's literally what the chapter says. This is page 152 if people are curious. And then he goes on to talk about that they even created at Riverside Church giant statues to, get this, the church included statues to famous heroes of secular history.
Ayn Rand, what is it?
Moses, Hegel, Dante, Muhammad, and Darwin.
Muhammad and Darwin?
Yeah, these are the new saints of the Rockefeller Riverside Church.
Whoa.
And get this is what's crazy. At this time, in the this is in the 1920s when they first create Union Theological Seminary, which is one of the first liberal seminaries in America. It liberalizes.
But when you say liberal, how liberal? I mean, for the time, it was pretty liberal,
Protestant
right?
liberalism. All right, so at this time, there was a book by a famous Calvinist. He wrote a book, J. Gresham Machen, and the book is about liberalism in theology. And he's writing about this Union Theological Seminary being set up in the 1920s. And the money that the Rockefellers put into that seminary. So liberal Protestantism is actually where we get the term today, fundamentalism. So if you want to know the actual history of it, fundamentalism means that you believe in what Protestant theologians at the time called the five fundamentals. That just means the Trinity, the deity of Christ, the virgin birth, inspiration of scriptures. I forget what the other one is, but resurrection, something like that.
So just like super basic doctrines that the church always believed.
Actually, everybody who believes in the basics of Christianity is a, quote, fundamentalist, according to this historical controversy. But the fundamentalists set themselves off against the Rockefeller seminaries, who were putting out people who doubted those things in the 1920s and 30s. Anyway, long story short, the end of this chapter notes that by the time of Junior Rockefeller's death, the family had contributed $75 million to the spread of ecumenism and liberal churches and seminaries. So you can see it right there.
And the basis for this...
This is the authorized biography of these people. This is perfect for what we're talking about with Daniel and Eli.
So, and the theological basis for this and the justification for this and the moral claim for this is what? I mean, these aren't people who care about theology, because they've even gone beyond just the believing in the basics, right? With the higher criticism that the Rockefellers embraced.
He even says that the liberal theology, what was called at the time social gospel, the social gospel that the Rockefeller family adopted, he said, would be useful for his ideas of globalization. So the church is now being turned to a tool, not of the state, but of the private family that controls the state, is the point. And that's the point of this book, is that they're doing the same thing with missionaries in these other countries to basically spread the Rockefeller empire.
And what does this result in from people that, a lot of people within the former charismatic Christians, former evangelicals, members of these, Baptist churches? You see so many of them just going into nihilism, so many of them going to atheism. These people aren't leaving these churches and then becoming, they're not leaving these churches becoming Orthodox, right? These people are, a lot of them are becoming atheists.
The younger generations begin to sense that this isn't authentic religion. It's a controlled money operation mechanism for these powers. And that's why it's Abby Rockefeller, the daughter, who I'm not saying that her motivations are good, but she's pretty clear that the reason that she became this pioneer feminist was that she saw through all of this social gospel. So she basically sees all this social gospel, liberal, Rockefeller created religion as BS and decides, yeah, I'm just going to go full Marxist. And she puts with the family millions and millions of dollars into Cell 16, third wave feminism. She's the conduit by which third wave feminism gets Rockefeller money. But what I'm saying is that she literally does, I think, see through their phony social gospel. But I'm not saying that justifies her conclusions. It justifies the title of your stream today, that this leads to that nihilistic, nothing matters worldview.
Even in Lawrence Rockefeller as well. I mean, Lawrence Rockefeller, he's somebody who didn't seem to care at all about, the former liberal Protestant worldview that his family adhered to and that he was raised under John D. Rockefeller Jr. He got all into funding all these UFO movements. Yeah, he got really into funding. I think he funded a lot of the psychedelic stuff. I think it's Lawrence Rockefeller.
It is Lawrence.
Yeah, so Lawrence, I've got to brush up on this stuff. We talked about this on some streams 6 years ago.
And Nelson goes into politics and becomes he's running the CIA operations in Latin.
He tried to become he ran for president, didn't he?
Yeah, but he was CIA.
So yeah, that's what Thy Will Be Done is about Nelson's work with the CIA and through these groups like SIL, using the veneer of, well, we have to teach these people English and we have to teach them how to understand the scriptures to get them to sign contracts for mineral exploitation, oil exploration on their land, and basically signing it over. You see this same thing happening now. This hasn't died off. You see the same thing happening now with the new religion. The religion of nihilism has given birth to this almost Gaia worship religion of global, of climate change, right? So now we need to create these NGOs everywhere and put land in the name of these NGOs. And you see all throughout South America, these Rockefeller Foundation funded groups come into town. I mean, they're even right here at our doorstep, man. These Rockefeller funded groups, they send these little bundle of stick hippie kids to go and run smaller foundations where they will buy up a bunch of land and then run businesses or just make them nature reserves for reforestation. So it's basically just, well, if you own a bunch of land and you keep the dirty people off of the land and keep it from being actually productive for people, then you're being green. This is sustainable and you can get carbon credits. So all of these Rockefeller Foundation goons are out there just living off of the crumbs of $500,000 grants here and there for these little groups of potheads who want to buy up tracts of usable land from, ancestral land from people's families that's been passed down for
documentary, a 60 Minutes interview with people from Gates Foundation talking about the very scam that you're talking about, where I forget if it was like Peru or somewhere.
It's all over South America, dude. It's staggering. It's everywhere. It's all over the place. You meet these people on the ground, and these idiots who are doing it, who are on the ground, they're influencers. This is who these people are. They're literally their life coaches. Yep. They're influencer life coaches who are like, oh, I've got a coaching session today, like with some of my clients, and they're coaching people how to do deep breathing and whatnot, and they're out here, then some of them are crypto groups too, where they have these like kind of crypto companies that have made it really big, and they'll try to buy into these scams as well. And this is the new land acquisition. This is the new gold rush. This is the new oil exploration, is the kind of Green New Deal type stuff, which you don't even need a Green New Deal. This stuff's already happening. The carbon credit system, it's already being rolled out. And these NGOs are all over the ground throughout South America and Central America purchasing tracts of land.
Yeah, they're fronts for these super wealthy people to get land under the guise of protecting the land from the humans and the indigenous peoples who are harming the land.
But they're bad because if you breathe CO2, but if they can get you off of it, then they can just grow a bunch of non-native trees and whatnot. But it's they're looking at it for mineral exploitation and stuff as well. So it's all a giant scam. But you see with Daniel Plainview's character, he'll roll into a town, he'll give this great sales pitch, And the sales pitch scenes are fantastic because there's a sense you get from him that yes, he's cunning and he's looking at these people like a wolf looking at some sheep, but also
Oh, yes.
he almost seems to have convinced. Like in the first sales pitch, his voice is much softer, right? He's like, I've traveled over half the state to be here with you today to talk about this land, and he gives a very he gives a great sales pitch. He's like, there's going to be these people that'll try to get between you and your money, but I can do all of this directly. You can deal with me directly. I'll talk to you frankly. I'm an oil man, so I hope you don't mind me just giving you the straight shooter talk. We'll just get straight to the point. And he gives his sales pitch as like the everyday man, the family man, and he tells people that we're going to build schools, we're going to have infrastructure. We're going to bring water here. We're going to dig wells. You're going to have more water than you'll know what to do with. He promises them bread. He literally gives them the promises that that the devil tempts Christ with. We'll give you bread, and we'll give you the world, basically. But there's a sense that you get from him where it's you're not even sure how cynical he is when he's saying this. Maybe he believes it. Maybe he's convinced himself that what he's doing is actually bringing prosperity to these people, while he's obviously harvesting most of the money. He's leaving these communities afterwards. He's a millionaire. They are getting, a few $1,000s for their land. They're getting some, maybe they'll get a little bit of money each year if there's a pipeline running through their land. But he's the one who's really, getting generational wealth off of this. So
yeah, there's a great novel that I just remembered I've been reading recently. It was one of our grad novels that we covered. And a lot of people forget that Melville had some other really good pieces that he did other than Moby Dick. I have to think that this movie is influenced by Melville's Confidence Man. If you've never read it, it's a really difficult book. It's not an easy read, but it's essentially a critique of the American dream via the way that it's packaged and sold through people like either Paul Dano or Daniel Day-Lewis's characters. Because in the novel, basically, it's a bunch of people on a steamboat, and they're all these different con men. And they've all kind of ended up on this steamboat trying to con each other. And it's a lot of different conversations about different kinds of cons. There's a religious character who's a con, who runs a charity foundation that's fake. There's every kind of con man you could think of. And ultimately, the con man par excellence, who seems to keep appearing in the novel, is the devil, we assume, because he's the father of lies. He's the ultimate sort of con man. And but there's a lot of sort of both Paul Dano and Daniel Day-Lewis characters in this novel. But that kind of is like the way the American dream is sold, is as both of these characters portray it. So, you made this point when we were talking about twin flames. At the end of one of those twin flame documentaries, the twin flame dude, I forget his name, but he was basically saying, well, I'm just being a good American. I mean, America is start your own religion and start your own business. Why not combine the two into a monopoly? And that monopoly spirit is the spirit of the Rockefellers, right? So, I mean, we can critique libertarianism, but it is true to say that even in terms of the ideal of what libertarianism is, the Rockefellers have never represented that. They've always represented the idea of monopoly capital, which is, you see this, for example, when Daniel says to the Union oil men, or whoever those guys are, who are
Standard guys.
Yeah, when they're trying to buy him out, he says,
so that is Standard Oil is Rockefeller, right?
Yeah,
so he's
right.
constantly at odds with these guys because they've got more resources. He envies them. He's spiteful to them.
Yeah, and that's when he says, do you also own the
Do you
line?
not also own the railroads? You're going to give me better prices on shipping? And the guy's like, what? We can't do that. He's like,
do that same thing. He wants company towns. He wants to own the lines.
Yeah. Because
that was one of the things that J.P. Morgan and the Rockefellers figured out, was that in order to have an empire, you need to not just control the steel, you need to also control the train lines that bring the steel, and also to control the oil that powers the train or the buses, or so you want to, it's monopoly mindset, which is to basically just take over everything.
Right. And from the perspective of kind of this, nihilistic, very pragmatic worldview of just, well, get what's yours, go carve out your place in the world. There's nothing wrong with that. So Plainview's character,
Yeah.
although when he runs into the Standard Oil guys, it's always a little bit contentious because they're his rivals, right? And
Right.
he ends up really despising them, but you can see his spite is tied in with this drive that he has, this animalistic business drive that's just in so embedded in his soul that this passion just controls him. But also one of the best scenes in the movie is when he's talking to the Standard guys and he's pissed drunk, and I think he had just picked up his son. His son had gone deaf from an accident at an oil derrick. There was an explosion, and the kid goes deaf, which is, Plainview's voice is his power, right? So all of a sudden, this closest associate, he's always got somebody with him, right? You mentioned earlier how he says, I just want to get enough money to where I can get away from people. He's got this drive to get away from people. He becomes more and more spiteful. He says, like, I've been building up my hatred piece by piece. I hate most people. I want no one else to succeed. And it's like one of the best monologues in any film is that his monologue to his brother. That scene is just amazing. And it's so visceral, and it's like a horror scene, right? You're looking at a man bearing his soul, and as he's doing it, he's kind of embracing it more and more, and it's leading up to this tragic murder of his fake brother, who's a con man, right? So again, Daniel Day-Lewis hates con men, but he himself, it's like I don't think he fully realizes the extent to which he is embodied this.
He only has a little bit of respect for the people that he perceives to be engaging in the same types of power struggles and con artistry that he's involved in. So he somewhat respects when he's at the meeting the Standard Oil guys, but then he basically pulls the crazy card and is like, I'm crazy enough to cut your throat. I actually am cutthroat in both senses, literally and spiritually, or literally and monetarily, and I will win this battle. So he feels like, I think, when he's drunk and later confronts the Standard Oil people, that business-wise, he's won.
Well, he sends his boy away, right? There's this incident where his son, I mean, there's so much in this too. Like, his son was actually right. You remember the scene before his son burns down the tent? They're in this, or it's not a tent. I think it's a wooden structure.
Yeah, the fake brother was a con man too.
The fake brother, yeah, the son seems to have realized this. The son's reading the diary that the fake brother had stolen from Daniel Plainview's real brother, who had supposedly, according to the con man, maybe he killed him, but he says he died of tuberculosis. He's like, there was no violence. He died of tuberculosis, and I took his notebook, or I took his journal, his diary. He's like, I'll leave, Daniel. I'll leave. Daniel Plainview, you could see him snap, right? When he realizes he's been conned, and it's not that he's been conned in business, right? He's been conned in the most intimate way, right? So this man was trying to live off of Daniel to a certain extent, but Daniel was willing to give him, he was just paying for him to basically be his shadow, right? This guy just would hang out with him while he's out there surveying land and whatnot, doing essentially nothing, just being his partner, right?
I think he's looking for an heir to the empire. And
I think he's looking for a human relationship, but in a way, I feel like because you notice he always has a side guy. He's like, this is my associate. This is my closest associate. HW,
and then HW can't hear, so he feels like he's worthless for the role that he was grooming him to be.
But he told his brother, he was like, the brother tells him, look, I don't want nothing from you. I just, I got nothing to do.
Yeah, but that's
I'll work.
That's part of his game, I think. So.
Yeah, totally. But I think Daniel's more sure. I don't think he would. His brother can't be his heir because he's not younger than him or anything. I think that showed more of the vulnerability of the character than the manipulative aspect of him. I think him being so vulnerable to this guy, he tells him, like, you give me, what did he say? He says something like, you give me this new hope or something like that.
He's building a dynasty. He wants to build a robber baron dynasty. And the robber barons were always concerned with also who would take over when they pass, because they want to hand this. They realize that you can't build an empire in one generation. If you want to keep building that empire, it's got to extend to the sons. And so, it's the same mindset that kings have, right? So you got to figure out who can run this shit, basically. And I think he feels like HW can't. Who's going to run it? Maybe this guy who's got my blood, because there will be blood. He thinks maybe this guy has the drive that I have in him because we're related. but of course he finds out, no, I'm being lied to again. So the last semblance of humanity that he might have with somebody, this fake brother, even that turns out to be a con, which in Daniel's mind reaffirms his totally social Darwinist view of the world, that it's kill or be killed. I got to do whatever I can to get to the top of the crap pile. That's his view of the world. So it's a total social Darwinism, which then leads to him to basically say that I want to be alone. And then when I'm confronted at the end, with my last competitor, I will resort to actually killing to be alone and on top. And that's how his mind is thinking eventually.
I think it's more subtle. I think there's aspects of both. I think it's like what you're saying is totally valid, but I think there's that part of him that's competing. There's the competitive drive that's in him that makes him want to just consume his competition, win the game, right? And just, that the first scene you see him, he's just he's a man with a pickaxe, just sweating his head off in a pit, digging for his wealth, right? And even when Standard offers to buy him out, he's like, then what would I do? What would I do if I don't care if I'm a millionaire? So to him, it's like the money
I think
is
you're
a
right.
means to the end of being able to isolate himself from people consciously. But I think there's the unconscious processes that are more human, which is why the film is it's such like a perfect film in so many ways, because the character is so complex that you can see both those in him. You can see him.
I think you're right. By the end, I don't think he cares about having an heir or a dynasty at all.
No, he's just broken.
Totally
He's completely broken. He's completely upset, and he hates everyone around him, and he hates himself. This is what the people around him, he sees them as his own. He sees his own failures in them. He sees his own con man in Eli. He sees his own con man in his fake brother. But I think like the fake brother, to him, that represented, he wants family. And this is throughout P.T. Anderson's films. There's always this, the character wants God. The character wants transcendental truth. The character wants what's real. And in Daniel Plainview's world, the closest thing that comes to that is a real human relationship, which he, slowly denies piece by piece through his actions, which is what's so tragic and horrific, right? Like you see that he's capable of love with him adopting HW. You see him caring for HW. You see the tender moments between him and that girl, Mary. You see him trying to protect children. So there's like this, and then when he meets his brother, the conversation with his brother, he talks about his drive for power, right? His drive for, he can't even articulate it. He's like, I have a competition in me. I want no one else to succeed.
Right.
Sometimes I look at people and I see nothing worth liking.
Right.
I see the worst in people. It's like, it's one of the best monologues. The way he delivers it is so haunting. So and then that's contrasted with the tenderness that he's showing to his fake brother. He thinks it's his brother. He tells him, you give me this new spark, right? And it's like, he wants to share life, but to him, sharing life kind of ends up meaning, sharing in the struggle for power, struggling towards this will to, whatever it is to accomplish this drive and to satisfy this drive in me, which is ultimately insatiable. And I think like what's so profound about the film is that it works on both levels. Yes, he's being driven by these almost psychopathic desires to manipulate people around him, but he's not a cold, calculating lizard. He's a man who's hurt. He's a man who's isolated, and who's isolated himself from God. And then he does that. He further isolates himself from God through his actions of spite and of hatred and of retribution towards the people around him, because he feels so wounded, right? Like in the end, he lashes out at HW and says the most horrific things you could ever say to an adopted son, right? You're a bastard in a basket. You mean nothing to me. You were a pretty face to buy land. You were a pretty face to use to buy land. He tells him this. But I think that when he tells him that, indicates that it's actually not true. And what eats him up so much inside is he knows that that's not the totality of the truth. The truth is he's a human being who desires love. He sees himself in HW, this abandoned child whose father, his father died. We don't know what happened to Plainview's dad, but he obviously had a bad relationship. So I think when he says that, when he tells him you were just a bastard in a basket, what's like so tear-jerking about the scene is, it's not even true. It's like he's lashing out at him because he's hurt, and he's only harming himself, and it's so Yeah. So sorry, that was a long ass rant.
No, I mean, I totally vibe with you, bro. I totally
Yeah.
vibe with
Well, that's why we're twin flames, dude.
you. All right, I'm not gonna make any gay jokes. I'm just gonna hold off. I'm gonna rage quit. I'm out of here, man.
Rage quit. That's like a typical runner. A typical runner, man. Always run. I'm the chaser.
The chaser
All my
and the
twin
runner.
flames.
Okay.
Elon Musk. All my celebrity girlfriends.
Well, you're jealous.
They always
because
run for
Elon
me.
opened for me on Infowars yesterday. So
That was pretty cool. You guys make sure to check out Jay over on the InfoWires yesterday with Elon opening for him. Let me read. Let me see if we got any super chats. I know we had
there's
one.
One last point I wanted to make about. So American literature is not. I mean, there's some good, people that stand out in American literature. Classically, you've got, like Faulkner and Flannery O'Connor and Melville, Poe, obviously, but there hasn't really been good American literature. Probably, maybe Cormac McCarthy. I've read some of his stuff, and people like Pynchon, sure. But one thing that's good about the early American writers that are famous and the Southern Gothic writers is that they're just as good as Dostoevsky in capturing the motivations and the character studies of different archetypes and different weirdos. And I find it fascinating that there must have been a big fascination at this time with con men, because Melville has it obviously throughout Competence Man. When Flannery O'Connor writes Wise Blood, the first several characters that Hazel Motes encounters are con men. And Hazel Motes ends up being a con man who's having a battle with another con man. So if you remember in the story, Hazel Motes is much like Daniel. Hazel is infuriated by people who are ripping off his con. And so he goes to battle. I was just trying to think of other stories where it's a battle between two con men, and this story has it. Violent Bear It Away, which is her other novella, is fascinating too, because it's similar time frame, and you've got a person who, the uncle plays this like crazy charismatic guy who lives out in the woods and believes he's a prophet. And so he plays a key role in the first half of the novel, raising this kid Tarwater out in the woods. And I mean, they're kind of comedic novellas too, but they're really good at capturing this fascination. And the reason the uncle is relevant is because he's a charismatic, and there really wasn't a huge charismatic movement at this time. So just like Hazel Motes, who sets up the atheist church, he's kind of a predictor, a pre-signifier of the cultural manifestation of the new atheists like Dawkins and these characters, right? Flannery O'Connor's writing about this in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Then you get this weird charismatic uncle in Violent Bear It Away, very, very prophetic for the rise of crazy charismatic prosperity gospel stuff. But yeah, great literature has this a way to do this. And I think the key to this movie is that it's like the great literature of that time frame.
Yeah. Yeah, it really encapsulates it so well. I mean, visually too. I mean, visually, it's not an expensive movie, but the way that the landscape shots are done, the close-ups on the characters, and all the long shots, and the way it just kind of lets moments simmer in a really nice way, right? Like the Plainview's character is revealed through his glances. Daniel Day-Lewis shows these. You see his eyes become more and more spiteful and demonic as it goes, and he's a character that has so much depth, and it's all portrayed with subtlety, and the subtlety in the writing is really good too. It definitely reminds me of like the script is almost like a Melville written thing.
Exactly.
It's
I like how he named
sweet.
his church the Church of the Third Revelation. That just sounds perfectly like evangelical charismatic, right? Pick something out
and because it happened during
the Revelation, right?
Yeah, well, it happened during the so-called Third Great Awakening too. I think it's kind of harkening back to that, the idea of the Third Great Awakening. Which do you want to get in a little bit more?
Time stuff, so that they love to capitalize on the sensationalism of the end time stuff, right? So it's like the Church of the Third Revelation. You immediately think of the Book of Revelation.
Absolutely. And Eli's character and his practices in the church, I mean, they're really performative. They're so they're highly emotionally charged kind of preaching sessions that he gives. And it's basically he gives a sermon and then he plays around with the demons in people, right? Like he's gonna cast out the arthritis demon from some old lady. So he casts out the demon of arthritis from this lady, and you know, I like how they capture the creepiness of it, and he's kind of I think that Daniel Day-Lewis overshadows everyone else in the film, and I think he should. I don't think Eli Sunday's character should have been played more powerfully. I think he was perfectly slimy and corny. Right. It really worked, but he gets all weird and kind of sexual with that lady. You notice that in that scene? He's like, "I'm gonna caress you," and he starts talking.
Talking to demon voices. He
gets all.
Yeah, he knows this old woman's probably not had a man touch her in a long time, and so yeah, he's completely manipulative at every level.
And it's mostly ladies. You notice mostly ladies in his church.
He manipulates this crew of like old hags, exactly.
Yeah, and they walk around and they've got their little. They've got cloth crosses. I thought that was kind of interesting. The cross is cloth.
The great thing about Paul Dano's role here, he plays this perfectly. Like, I don't know how he did it, but he perfectly captured the smugness that like an evangelical preacher gets with their eyes, because he's very just like in every scene, he's very publicly pious. And he's like, "Daniel, I hope that you will mention me when you start the rig, and that you will allow me to bless it." Right? It's just like it comes off perfectly super pious.
When he's gonna, well, that's a great scene. He wants to bless the well. He tells Daniel, "I want to bless the well," and you can see Daniel Plainview's character is just like, "Just freaking get away from me." He's like, "Oh, sure, great idea." And then
it's a power struggle, right?
Yeah.
He wants Tim to show that I'm the one that's actually allowing you to have this well and to say that you can do this.
Yeah.
And Daniel Plainview is like, "Well, you're not, I own the town." So
yeah, exactly.
It's a power struggle, yeah.
And then, Plainview, actually, I thought it was an interesting moment. And it's so well written, because Plainview, instead of himself just doing the blessing, he calls up the innocent young girl, his little sister Mary, right? Eli's little sister Mary, who H.W. ends up marrying at the end of the film. And you notice that marriage, it was more of a traditional, perhaps like Episcopalian or Anglican wedding, where they had, had a priest with a stole, where they had a priest with vestments, rather than this evangelical craziness that her family was involved in. I thought that was an interesting detail. But yeah, he brings up little Mary, and then Daniel says something, and basically Daniel does the well blessing with little Mary, and leaves Eli seething at the bottom with his little flock of boomer.
Yeah, it was a big nag. He dissed him. Yeah.
Yep, he was a huge diss. So yeah, the religious practices of the time in the Protestant world, you can see how the shrewd businessmen, who are themselves at least familiar with con men. If you're not a con man at that time as a businessman, you have at least been exposed to some dudes that are. And the ones that are the most successful are the ones that are the biggest con men. Look at the Rockefellers, right? You have to sell them on the dream. You sell them on this big dream, which is pretty much religious in scope, in order to get these people to all sell their land, to all move into these, more consolidated, industrialized economic models, away from their more traditional agrarian mode of living, to stop being sheep farmers and move into a little town closer together, because you don't have land anymore because you sold it off to the oil prospectors. You got to sell them on the ease and the comfort. It's going to be paradise. You're going to have bread. We're going to have theater. We're going to have all this great stuff, and life is going to be easy.
We often think, too, of these big-scale con men as the ones that failed. We think of Sam Bankman-Fried. We think of, Bernie Madoff. We think of the people that get caught in their high-level Ponzi schemes, when in actual fact, yeah, those guys were con men that got caught, but there's big con men above them that haven't been caught and don't get caught. And that's the thing, is that a lot of people can't get past the fact that, the Daniel character is the mindset of the successful sort of Rockefeller type of person. It's not the mindset of a person that is the failure in big business. This is the mindset of the people who are successful in big business. And that's what a lot of normies can't get past, right? Normies think that, well, Sam Walton's powerful and rich because he pulled himself up by his bootstraps and he worked really hard. And,
Bill Gates, right?
It's cutting deals and being devious that gets you to that level. You can be successful and virtuous in business. That's definitely possible. But to get to the level of what we're talking about here, no, we're talking about people who are willing to, there will be blood. That's the point.
Exactly. So, all you bigots in the chat, thank you guys for those of you who sent super chats. We got one super chat from Greg the Barine. Sending sending those prosperity gospel Federal Reserve notes.
That's
says, I'm grateful
for. So he's going to get 100-fold back.
That's right. Now, Greg the Barine says, I'm grateful for you both. He's clearly talking about me and Daniel Day-Lewis, or me and my twin flame. I have many twin flames, but he's clearly talking about us. But thank you, Greg.
Actually, I heard that you're into method acting. I heard, right? And
method acting? No, dude, I don't do meth anymore, man. No, I quit. I quit doing meth weeks ago.
Okay, so you weren't both characters in Brokeback Mountain?
Brokeback Mountain? Is that some? Is this supposed to be? Oh, you're making fun of the poor homosexuals again.
Bigotry, I think, is what.
You're being a bigot.
The term you use is bigotry.
How surprising! You think it's not virtuous to be a homosexual? Shows a lot about you, Mr. Dyer. Get with the times, my friend.
Last thing about the movie, if you want to close it out.
No, I don't want to close it out. Let me just read the super chat and tell the bigots. Hey, what's up with you, Greg the Barine? Greg the Barine's the only super chat bigot right now. Thank you, Greg Barine. The rest of you guys are slacking.
This is the best breakdown of this movie you're ever going to hear. So we better.
This is come on. What are you doing, guys? Share the videos, like the video. We got a bunch of people watching. I know all of you haven't hit the thumbs up. If you're not already subscribed, make sure to subscribe. Over on Rockfin, thank you guys for dropping the tips on Rockfin. We got a tip over here from Ashley Webb. Says, love these collaborative streams with you guys. Total genius. So again, she's talking about me and Daniel Day-Lewis, who I'm collaborating with. He's one of my twin flames.
So Heath Ledger and Jake Gyllenhaal together in your head as Brokeback Mountain in one persona is what you're getting at, right?
I don't know this. I don't understand these references that you're.
Okay, but you know Boogie Nights.
I just don't get it. I don't get it. I don't understand. Are you trying to? Is this humor? Is this something you think? Is this something to laugh about?
Rage quit.
You think twin flames is something? You think twin flames is something to laugh about? There are thousands of us separated from our celebrity twin flames who are being rejected, who are having to pursue them and overcome all sorts of obstacles, both legal and physical and emotional and perhaps spiritual. And you seem to want to be one of those obstacles between me and my twin flames. And you're just going to laugh and you're just going to look down and look at me smugly and have your little having that little face you have, just having that stupid face.
I feel like you just want me to rage quit so you can have some drama to post about. Is that what it is?
This is the top drama stream, the top drama channel. This channel cannot live without drumming up tons of drama.
You're just mad because Frank Turek owned you and exposed you as a Mason years ago.
My goodness. Oh my man, that guy still has a YouTube channel. No, it's not Turek. It was Tufano, bro.
Tufano. I don't remember his name.
Come on, dude. He
exposed you as a Mason and you quit streaming for a year. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that hurt your feelings.
Bro. This stream's over. We're done. We're freaking done. No, we're the
Dude,
hey, everybody.
Frank ended you. I can't believe it.
Ended you, bro. Like that libertarian, what was his name? Peterson. That completely embarrassed Jay yesterday or the other day in that debate.
Austin Lee Peterson
just destroyed Jay.
That's amazing.
All right. I wonder if there's some of these boomers in the chat probably think we really hate each other. There are always people commenting.
People they can't tell when we're joking.
You can't joke for too long, and you can't be too dry with it, or they'll freak out.
That's what it is. Yeah, they dry humor. People can't figure it out.
Which is the only good type of humor.
Everybody's got the tism.
Exactly. The only good type of humor is that dry humor. We like it dry. Like
dry
Daniel
rub.
Day-Lewis likes his gin. We like it dry.
Put
Not
some dry
Daniel
rub on
Plainview,
them.
rather. But yeah, guys, hey, what's up, bigots? You guys trying to get your bigot on? You trying to increase your bigotry levels? Head over there to chalk.com. Your boy Jay Dyer watching this. I know he's up on that Chad mode as well. Look at that. We got stacks and stacks of it. Jay's doing bumps of Chad mode underneath. He dips his head underneath the camera. He does a little bump of that Chad mode. You see his nose will be a little bit blue from that Chad mode. Highest quality, all natural pre-workout with 100% organic caffeine. There is no artificial flavors, no preservatives, no retarded additives in Chad mode to get you in that Chad zone, to get you in the zone. I love the little subtext there. It says, bring the thunder. You can get 53% off of all these amazing products over at chalk.com. The Tomcat 100 extract, clinically proven in the exact dosages used here to improve testosterone production, promote healthy testosterone production in healthy males. The Chalk Daily, which has the Shilajit in it as well. I use these every day. Hit them up at chalk.com. Big 53 life, big 53 life. That coupon code will get you 53% off all subscriptions. So if you want to get one of any of the stacks, like they have the Men's Vitality stack, there's a stack also that comes with the Chad mode, the Tomcat 100, and the Daily, and I think it might have the Shilajit as well. Those are legit. Those are super good, and they will actually they will send that to you if you get that subscription, so you don't have to remember to re-up each month. They'll send it to you each month. You can cancel anytime, and that will lock in that deal at 53% off if you use the coupon code BIG53LIFE. That will also support the streams we do here. Shout out to Chalk, our sponsor, who is 100% supportive of the work we've done here, regardless of the insane bigotry from people like Jay over here, who was insulting the poor, downtrodden, downtrodden Homo sapiens by making fun of their movie Brokeback Mountain, which Jay seems to know a lot about, but I never seen. So yeah, hit them up at chalk.com, big53life. Use that coupon code to get 53% off all subscriptions for life. And make sure to share the video, like the video, do all that stuff. And make sure to send Jay nasty, mean emails about how mean he is to me, and to tell him to be nicer to me, and to not try to get between me and my celebrity twin flames that he's constantly trying to sabotage. So back to the stream. Back to the task at hand. I know you had some thoughts you wanted to bring up. I saw you writing down. Maybe you were just writing down insults that you could try and hurt me and make me rage quit on in our struggle session
yeah,
here.
It's my comedy bits. I'm trying to figure out ways to hurt people's feelings, basically, and
His comedy bits
to win, to win at all costs, basically. So
Jay's comedy bits. That's what he calls that's what I call the sections of Jay's weird looking face. This is comedy bits. I got to break it up into sections to digest that ugly ass face. Look at that thing. Whoa.
I don't know what hurt your feelings so bad. You got to go for my face, but
comedy bits. Comedy bits. Is that what your lady calls your man part? She calls them your comedy bits because they so itty bitty. Your bits is so itty bitty.
The libertarian debate. Did I do something to hurt your feelings, bro? I'm so sorry. I don't know what's causing this.
Oh yeah. Then he plays this is how Jay does it, right? He'll start the roasting, and he gets a little bit back, and then it turns into, oh, Tristan, you're so mean.
I didn't know
Don't be so mean to me. Gaslight. It'll just gaslight and make you like, oh, why would you say? Why would you make fun of my comedy bits? That's what my wife calls my parts down below, my comedy bits, because it makes her laugh every time she sees them.
One Brokeback Mountain joke over the line. And Tristan's had it.
Two tokes over the
rage, dude. I'm sorry, dude. I'm sorry.
Poor Jay.
Let's see. Yeah, Daniel has Did you want to get back to the movie or?
No, the struggle. I mean, I forgot we were talking about a movie. I feel like I have a competition in me. I want no one else to have comedy bits. So, I see the unfunniest in people.
Well, he basically becomes fully possessed, right? So by the bowling alley scene and the last scene with HW, I think we've seen somebody who's progressed to full on like he's accepted the full ramifications of giving himself over to vice. And in this case, the vice is greed and envy. And maybe even it started as greed at first, just wanting to be wealthy and find the silver or the gold. But that's eventually caved into being completely possessed by just an insane level of envy that wants to basically see everyone destroyed. And I think the title of your podcast is great because that's one of the points of Sarah from Rose's, nihilism book, is that the end result of nihilism isn't to create a utopia, or the revolution isn't to create a utopia or to make everyone's lives better, but actually it is to burn it all down. And that's the end result of what we get with Daniel, which is ironic because that's kind of where a lot of the communists and the Marxists ended up, right? Is in this nihilistic drive to just destroy everything. So Daniel, the arch capitalist, manifesting the exact same revolutionary nihilism of somebody like a Lenin.
Totally. Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, it's so sad the way that it happens too, right? I mean, you see, what the progression of him. I mean, you see that HW and his pain about his relationship with him is a major driving force in pushing him further into hiding away in that nihilism, right? So his rejection of God, which results in the rejection of real love between him and other people, right? Rather than allowing himself to actually feel that vulnerability, he tries to turn that vulnerability that he has into some sort of an advantage, right? Like, the weakness he has, which is not a weakness, of wanting to take this boy into his life and take care of him, he ends up, feeling so vulnerable and exposed to this person who he perceives HW wanting to move away and go to Mexico with his wife and run his own business. He perceives this as an assault on himself. He says, you're competition to me now.
Yeah, you're now competition, yeah.
Right. So and you saw the abandonment cycle that he was going through, of like this perceived abandonment from other people and the perceived slights of other people, adding more and more into his kind of, like, to use a modern psychological term, like the narcissistic wound that he had, which we don't know the origin of it originally, but we know that it led him to want to isolate himself, to want to see other people as a means to an end to his own satisfaction of his desires and his pleasure, which his pleasure is just fulfilling his drive, which his drive is this mysterious thing inside of him, which you mentioned is ultimately demonic, right? The moment when he reveals the demon to his brother, when he tells him, I have a competition in me, I want no one else to succeed, I see the worst in people. And this is, you read the lives of saints, the Orthodox lives of saints, we're always called to see the best in people. We're always called to see the human in people, and not to automatically jump to a point of like condemnation of other people. You see consistently in the writings of the saints them saying to actually justify others when they hurt you, right? When somebody harms you, to look and to say, well, look, I mean, this obviously is painful, but to actually forgive somebody, one of those steps is often like just understanding why they did this. Well, this person must have experienced a lot of pain to be able to lash out like this at other people and to want to be so harmful to other people. And like Jay, when he says mean jokes about me, that comes from a place of him.
Who hurt you?
Exactly. Who hurt you? And in the secular gay world, in the fake piety signaling world, it gets so annoying of like this, oh, well, I know you're just being mean to me because you're really hurt, but they're just trying to one up, right? They're just like, oh, well, I know you're just being mean to me. I understand that your father left you as a child and I pray for you. It's like, okay, you just took a jab, but tried to act like you gave me a hug. So,
yeah.
But you are, in the writings of the saints,
that
in the Orthodox
Lofton
Church
style. That's
yeah.
that Michael Lofton style.
That's right, but you gotta do it with a rhyme. You know, that Michael Loft dog. You gotta do it in rhyme. So yeah. Anyways, this completely contrasts with the classical, the Orthodox Christian perspective on how to deal with suffering and how to deal with betrayal from other people. Even now, instead of that, Daniel Plainview, he tends to go further into the demonism of, well, I just want to get enough money so I can isolate myself from other people. And this is the quote from Dostoevsky in The Brothers Karamazov, where he says, hell is the inability to love. I probably butchered the quote, but the character says in this book that Dostoevsky wrote, hell is the inability to love. And you see that in Plainview's world. Like that's what he embodies. And when he sends his son away, that scene before he sends his son away, the son acts up. The son tries to burn. The son sets this line of fire going towards the fake brother, con man. And he's basically trying to kind of tell the dad, this dude is a liar. And he wants to protect his father from this guy. But Plainview ends up, the boy runs out into the wilderness, into the darkness of the woods. Plainview runs out there, gets him, and brings him back. And then I think it's the next scene, he's sending him off on a train. But you see in that scene when he's on the train, sending HW out, that's one of there's not really much dialogue in the scene. I got a screenshot of it pulled up here. But you see him, he actually sheds a tear in that scene. There's a couple moments when he cries. One of the moments that Plainview cries is when he's reading his brother's diary after he realizes the brother's a con man. I think was that after he killed him that he reads the diary or before? But he weeps. Like he's reading his brother's diary, his brother is dead, and then the fake con man brother, he kills him. He's reading the diary and he's crying. Now we don't know exactly why, which is a wise choice by the filmmakers because it kind of does add this depth of analysis that you can give it, because there are a lot of reasons why he could be crying, but he's weeping. And then also when he sends HW away, he's on this train, he's alone with him, and you see he's staring out the window and he's tortured. But he's dealing with the hurt by, you can see it turns into anger, right? Like when he starts experiencing the pain, the character turns it into rage. But he actually, you see a tear fall from his eye right before he gets up and leaves. He tells him, I'm just going to go talk to the conductor, and the kid's deaf. The kid can't even hear him. So his frustration of not being able to communicate with the boy, not being able to help the boy, and if God can't help him as well, he perceives, right? He sees Eli as a con man. Well, why don't you heal my son, he tells him. So I think all of that adds this kind of human aspect to him, where he wants his son to be well. Maybe part of him wants it for the wrong reason. Maybe part of him wants it because he really loves him. Maybe the part of him that wants all this for the wrong reason is just hiding from the pain of actually not being able to deal with that love that a father should have for his kid. And this is all kind of endemic in American literature as well now, right? I think this idea of the fatherless child, the adopted child, the bastard in the basket, as Daniel Plainview tells HW he is, that's something that's throughout American literature, and then also Anderson's movies, right? Magnolia is about broken families, child abuse, the results of that through the generations. Boogie Nights, also broken families, child abuse, the results of that through the generations and trying to find surrogate families. So that's a theme you see throughout
same thing with Godfather, right? Michael Corleone is doing everything for the family, his family and his mafia family, supposedly, and for the good of his people. By the end of the Godfather trilogy, he's alone. He's lost his daughter. So he has nothing, he has no lineage, no legacy. It's just him alone in his garden. And he falls over alone when he dies. So yeah, same theme here. And, when it comes to Daniel's milkshake brings all the boys to the bar.
I mean, that was one of the most powerful lines in the movie. At the end, after he kills Eli and when he breaks the fourth wall and he looks into the camera and he's like, my milkshake brings all the boys to the yard, and that's right, it's better than yours. And then it cuts, and then it actually plays Smash Mouth All-Star. And it's like, somebody once told me the world is gonna roll. And it was like, it's like chills, and I'm getting tears just thinking about it. I mean, yeah, that was a great decision to use Smash Mouth as the end.
I didn't remember that milkshake scene. Jamie kept saying all these milkshake lines, and I thought, are you talking about that dumb joke I made about Kellis? And she's like, no, the movie. And I'm like, because I hadn't seen this since 2007. I didn't remember the whole final. I mean, I remember the bowling alley scene, but not the dialogue. And that's, everybody remembers it's a meme now. The milkshake.
Yeah, that's the most famous line of the movie. It's crazy because I think there's so many lines that are even better, but it's very memorable because it's so. It's like comical. It's like vaudeville almost, the way that Daniel Plainview is acting. I mean, he's acting so ridiculous. In the scene before it, when he's raging at his son, he's acting completely ridiculous too. I'm kind of scrolling through here trying to find the milkshake scene here. Eli breaks down and Eli comes to him all smug and tells him, well, I've been everything is good. The Lord has blessed me very much, and I'm just Daniel. It's great to see you. Now we're family, because Daniel's son married this guy's sister. He said, now we're family. It's so good to see you, my old friend. And so he's trying to act like real smug, and like he's trying to do this power play of, well, look how successful I am. I've got this suit, and he tells him, I've been doing work in radio, which I thought you would like that line.
He's a radio preacher now, exactly.
Yeah. It's like the next level of industrial revolution is radio. And so those little subtle historical reminders are kind of fun in the movie. But then he's actually begging. He doesn't let on, but he's actually coming to Daniel to try to get him to buy Bandy's tract, right? Remember, Bandy was this old man who didn't want to sell at the original Little Boston project. And Daniel had said, he's fine. Who cares? We'll just, I'm not going to go meet with him. We'll just wait it out.
The old coot figured out that Daniel murdered somebody, remember?
Yes.
And so the old coot had dirt, and that's why Daniel could never go after the old coot.
Well, that's a good point of the way that Daniel's baptism happens. And remember, he had already been baptized by oil, and then he goes to get baptized by Eli in his evangelical church.
Yeah.
And it was like a reverse con man, businessman, blackmail type tactic of like spiritual blackmail. Right. Of like, I know you want to buy my land, and I'll only sell it to you.
Oh, that's right. Did he sell it? So the old coot wasn't the Bandy tract?
No, he was Bandy, but then who was it? Bandy? That was Bandy. And then he was gonna, so Daniel's trying to build this pipeline to the ocean,
right?
And he needs to get through this tract on this 100-mile pipeline through San Luis Obispo, going to the sea, because he's trying to bypass the shipping, which is all consolidated by Rockefeller.
Right.
And then he goes and talks to Bandy. He kills his brother on Bandy's land out there, buries him in the middle of the night, right? So then it's back to the idea of Daniel in his pit in the very beginning, just physically laboring at, digging his own hole into the depths of hell. Then he has to dig the grave for his fake brother. Bandy shows up in the morning. Daniel's hungover from being so drunk the night before. He's emotionally exhausted. He's at his, you think his lowest point. And Bandy basically tells him, if you get baptized and you become a member of our church, which Eli's the guy who will baptize him, then you can put your pipe through my land. Was that? Yeah, that was Bandy. Okay, and then there was another.
He doesn't own it, so he doesn't own the land, and that was one of the things that he was all about. Was, remember, he says when he's talking to the land guy, he's like, "I own all of this, but not this.
Why don't I own this? Yeah. Why don't I own this?" He like looks at him and points in his face. So yeah, he's trying to buy up all that.
He
land.
wanted it all, not just to have his pipe there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. He wanted to be able to control it all, and the reason he did too, it wasn't out of. I just want to make money. Part of it was that he didn't want Standard Oil to get that money. Right. Because when you look, this same thing happened in the gold rush, and it's still going on today with mining and with the consolidation of resources and raw materials and minerals and gold and oil. It's a race. Like, if you don't get it, someone else is going to get it. So they're able to justify these shrewd, dishonest tactics of like, well, look, if I don't manipulate this person into allowing me to drill here, the next guy's going to come. He's just going to offer him, he's going to rip him off even worse, right?
Well, the CIA said, well, Stalin and the Soviets are going to be abusing and mind controlling people. So if we don't do it, then they will.
Exactly.
Literally,
so you have like the con man arms race of the robber barons that led to the consolidation.
Look, if I don't run the human trafficking, somebody else will.
Dude, libertarians will literally say that when they're like, "What, do you just want to ban all pornography?" You're like, "Yes, we should ban it all." They're like, "Yeah, but like someone's gonna make it. Someone's gonna do it. It's like drugs, bro. It's like someone's gonna sell the drugs." It's like, all right, man. So yeah, the end scene though, that last scene with Eli and with Plainview. Here, I've got the transcript pulled up here. That's like it's written so well. This is almost right after.
The way Eli squeals when Daniel slaps him or like drags him on the ground. He squeals.
Well, yeah, that's earlier in the movie when he beats the crap out of him and he force baptized. Oh, that's funny because he kind of forced bowling alley.
They do it. He does it too. He does
Both
a great
times.
squeal.
That's right. Well, earlier in the movie, Daniel beats him up when he comes to him telling him, well, you told me you give me $5,000 for the church. Where's our money? And he just straight slaps him in the face and knocks him on the...
He never actually fights him, though. He just kind of like slaps him and then rubs his face in the mud. And then he
dominates him.
He pushes him on the bowling alley, and then he yanks him and grabs him and pulls him.
Well, the first fight scene, it's before he was baptized by Eli. He kind of... Was it before or after? It was before. So he throws him down in the muddy, oily ground and starts splashing the oil on his face. He's like, you splash around down there. You just splash. I love that line. You splash around in there. And he force baptizes him in the oil.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Eli's like, squealing.
It's just such a perfect, like, weaselly soy squeal, because this guy, he never actually fight. He doesn't actually have the balls to actually fight with Daniel, even though Daniel's not really this imposing of a character. He's just kind of a, medium to skinny built dude. But he's got enough, balls to basically, smack around this soy church guy.
Yeah. I'm looking at the transcript right now. Like the development of the last few scenes, it's so beautifully done, and the transitions are so perfect. Like that, something that I don't know, maybe people don't talk about much in reviewing or analyzing movies is the editing. Like anybody's who ever edited a video at all, it is so difficult to edit raw footage. And the job that I don't know who edited this, but this was so seamlessly edited and beautifully edited. And there's nothing. The camera work's great too. There's nothing really fancy in the camera work. He doesn't use expensive cameras. I think it's just 35 millimeter with, like anamorphic lenses. It's really well done. And the editing is so on point, and the pacing at the end of like kind of building to this crescendo of the last scene, which in so many ways it builds up to this kind of emotional peak, and it keeps building and building until the very end and the release where, Plainview murders Eli.
It's one of the most tense, I think, movie final scenes, build-up scenes, probably in the top 10 for sure, maybe top 5. It reminds me of, like, have you seen Whiplash with J.K. Simmons?
No.
I mean, this is equivalent to the final scene in Whiplash when he's doing the drum solo and he's facing off against his enemy, his drum teacher. That's actually a really good movie that's similar to this, except that Miles Teller is not playing a villain, but as the movie progresses, he's getting more and more dastardly and willing to do anything to beat his musical competition, his music coach. So actually, that's a really good movie that's very similar to this, and it has a famous final scene where they're having to do this public performance, and J.K. Simmons doesn't want Miles Teller, the prodigy, to do well. Mm-hmm. And then Miles Teller goes against the music. Like he's also the conductor.
It reminds me of our relationship, like on these streams. It's like there's one person who doesn't want me to.
You're bald and old like J.K. Simmons, so that's
see what I'm saying? It's like one person just has this underhanded rage, and but it all stems from a point.
J.K. Simmons character, which you look just like, so that would be you.
No. I would say it's obviously the opposite, but it's okay because that rage comes from a place of hurt, Jay. I know it comes from a place of hurt, and I know people hurt you. And that you hurt deep down inside, Jay. And I understand your relationship with your father. I'll send you an email with the details of this. I don't want to reveal it to the audience, but I know that you know. People, I wonder if people will watch this and some boomers will actually. If we have to put disclaimers of
I can't believe the way Tristan treated Jay.
Tristan didn't really just talk about anything real with Jay. We need like a disclaimer of joking, but yeah. It reminds I forget what I was gonna make some stupid joke about Point Break being the greatest ending of a movie ever, but actually it is a great movie. Point Break is a solid movie.
Well, this is like Apocalypse Now level crazy scenes, right?
Yeah.
With Martin Sheen tripping acid and going nuts, or Martin Sheen having that confrontation with Marlon Brando when he's gone crazy and he's become a pagan god in his own mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
really intense level scenes, right? Like,
Yeah, you know, and you know, Plainview's the character Daniel Plainview is, I'd say it's better than I think they're such different movies, right? I used to love like Apocalypse Now used to be one of my favorite movies, the like the director's cut, extended cut. Um, this is up. I think this is a better film overall. You know, it's like it's easier to watch than Apocalypse Now. The pacing's a little better. It's 2.5 hours, but it doesn't feel that long. You know, it's like it's and even into the scenes where not much is happening, it's so gripping and visceral, and it's a horror movie in many ways, but there's no gore. It's more of a psychological horror of like watching the eyes of Daniel Day-Lewis become more and more enveloped in hatred and spite.
I think he's actually one of the top movie villains. I mean, compared to other, I mean, a lot of movie villains are kind of goofy and cartoonish. You know, they're like Darth Vader or something like that. But for real world villains, I was reading people's villain lists just to see if anybody put Daniel Plainview on there. Nobody did. It's all stuff like Hannibal Lecter. Okay, but
oh man.
But I mean, I think Daniel.
Some would probably put. But I'm thinking about what's it? Gangs of New York. I mean, that's another Daniel Day-Lewis character.
Yes, villain.
What's his name? Bill the Butcher. That's a great character. Bill, he made that movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about Daniel Plainview is that he's a villain who seems real. You know, this could be a real person.
Yeah.
Hannibal Lecter is exaggerated to the point that he doesn't really seem real. You know what I mean? That's not a real serial killer. I mean, maybe one person ever was like that. But if you watch Silence of the Lambs, it's so ridiculous because they play up the absurdity of his danger. Like they roll him out.
He's like a hissing animal. Like he's like old, like decrepit boomer.
In full medieval lockdown with like a face mask, and he can't talk because he's so dangerous that if he talked to you, he could like outsmart you into letting him out of the cage. You know?
Yeah. No. If you can hear 5 syllables, he can get you to just off yourself right there.
Yeah, exactly.
5 syllables is all it takes, and you're under his spell forever. Right? Anybody, and they've got him physically restrained, but he's like 125-pound pudgy skin sack boomer. It's like, dude, what is
like an old white boomer dude that's not gonna
But he speaks with a British accent.
It's like,
he's cartoonishly powerful in terms of his high IQ, but that's not real. But Daniel Day-Lewis is Daniel Plainview. It seems like a real dude that could be running a Fortune 100 company. I mean, that's who it would be.
Yeah, and I like how he's a villain, but at the same time, you could see at every point in the movie there's these choices that he makes where it's like, man, you could have just turned it all around by just not choosing.
Exactly.
You just didn't choose that.
Right.
You can see him make choices that are just kind of neutral, where you're in some of these junctions where even like the first manipulation that is shown where he says, well, they ask him where the mom is, and he tells kind of a half truth that's also a lie in it, but he could tell himself it's not a lie, and then it gets worse as he goes. So. And when I think with the scene where he's given the sales pitch about how they're going to build schools and how he encourages his men to bring their families to work with them. And while he's saying, I encourage my men to bring my families to work with them, it's showing them rising and it's sunrise, and it's just men getting out of their tents. Like they're alone. None of those guys are there with their families. They're riding in on trains. One of the shots right before he says this, it shows a bunch of dudes getting off of trains, a bunch of men all alone with little handbags with their equipment, and getting off the train to come and work at the oil fields. So he blatantly lies later on.
Yeah.
And this is some of those scenes like where the Standard Oil scenes with the Standard Oil guys, where he had just given up his son. He just abandoned his son, sent him off to be with at a private school because he's so frustrated with him. He can't communicate with him because the kid's now deaf, but he's broken up inside and he's drinking, and he goes and he meets with the Standard guys, and they're trying to buy him out. And he's like, he tells them, Standard offers him, they says, we'll make you a millionaire minute by minute sitting right here. And he goes, well, then what would I do with myself? Right. And then the Standard Oil guy is shocked. He's like, what? He's like, what would I do? What would I do with myself? What would I do with my time? Or something like that. He tells him. And he goes, you just spend time with your son. And you could see Plainview's eyes kind of just like squint a little bit, and he gets real intense. And then the guy finishes his sales pitch of like why he should sell. And he looks at him and goes, did you just tell me how to raise my family? And you could tell that because his conscience is bothered of him sending a son away. So he's so pissed.
He hit on something true that triggered him.
Mm-hmm. What triggered him there is, obviously it's his humanity, right? So instead of him just being, and he comes back at him with a threat of violence. He tells him real cold, and he tells him, what does he say? I'm going to come in your home at night and I'm going to cut your throat or something like that.
Yeah.
He's like, what? And he repeats it. I'm going to come into your room and I'm going to cut your throat at night. He
goes full Manson, right?
Yeah. And he's like, why? You don't need to be crazy.
Deal, and he just ups the ante 1,000. It's like, yeah, I'm just going to kill you. Like, what?
Yeah, that's yes, it's a crazy action. It's completely psychotic and irrational, but it just shows that he's so torn up inside about having abandoned his son. But then the next scene, his son comes back, right? He sends for his son to come back after this meeting. So his conscience was bothered. Now, does he send for his son to come back because he cares about him and he loves him, or is it because outward appearances? It's not exactly clear. And the ambiguity, I like that you got to do the ambiguity there because it gives you room for him to be human, for him to kind of breathe his character. And then he sees them, he's in a restaurant, and he orders a steak for him and his boy, and he's already drunk, and he orders a whiskey. Standard guys come in, they sit at the table, and the waiter starts serving them, and Daniel's ego gets the best of him, and he's like, we ordered first. Why are you serving them first? And he walks up and grabs his whiskey off the bar before the waiter even brings it to him, tosses it down, and then he says
there's
something.
A couple of times where he eats people's food to show dominance. He does it as a kind of an insult. Yeah.
Then he walks over to their table. He's sitting there just glaring at them, and he just reunited with his son. So it's like another one of these moments where his love for his son is what should be present, but instead
he cares about the envy, the struggle with this other guy. Did you notice he drinks that guy's liquor?
Yeah, he walks over to the table and he looks at him and he's like, "What did he? I gotta find the line." He tells
just
him,
wanted to go do his brag and be like, "I won over the pipeline issue," and then he grabs the guy's liquor, right?
Yeah. Well, the son. Remember, what's so great about the scene too is the son can't hear him. And remember, he puts this cloth over his face, and he starts drunkenly saying "And Standard offered us $500,000, but we told him to shove it," or something like that. And then he pulls the cloth off because his son's right there, so the son can't read his lips, and the son can't hear what he's saying. And then he stands up. He stands up and walks over. Here's the transcript. He stands up, walks over to him, and he says. Hold on. I want you to look over there. He points to his son, and the guy tells him, Daniel, let me introduce you to the guy next to me. And he, no. Look over there. You see, that's my son. You see him? And the guy goes, yes. He goes, do you see? I see him. You don't tell me how to raise my family. I mean, this is months later, maybe a year later, and he's so torn up inside, and that narcissistic wound, or that, that's a weird psychological turn now, but it's like his conscience bothers him. I love that scene though. He tells him, don't tell me how to raise my family. I told you not to tell me how to raise my family. And then he tells him, my son is happy. He's safe. I'm taking care of him now. So you look like a fool, don't you, Tilford? He's like, the guy's sitting there stunned. He's like, yes. He goes, yes, you do. And he goes, excuse me, gentlemen. He drinks his whiskey and then walks off. That scene encapsulates so much. It showed so much about the character, kind of his slipping in the violence, and
he's becoming psychotic because the first inklings of the psychosis that we saw was the rage that he had with the Standard Oil guy over a passing comment, which Daniel interpreted as him telling him what to do with his son. But
he literally was telling him what he should have done. Yeah, dude, you should take care of your freaking son.
Well, he just said you could spend more time with your son. And then Daniel took that as this in this bizarre way. And, you know, I'm sure we've all dealt with people in our lives who, when you say something,
Yeah.
they just sort of,
Talk
they
about
take
it. Tell me about
just,
it.
Yeah, like earlier in this chat, when you
We all deal with people in our lives who are clearly psychotic.
When you got triggered about the gay jokes and you went into a rage, it was probably hitting on something, you know, a root problem like Daniel. I'm just joking, man.
You're joking.
I'm just joking. But
Do you
for
think
the
you could
boomers,
just?
that was a joke. That was
You think you could just say mean things and then say you're joking and then we're just friends?
right?
Again?
Yeah, that's the way out. That's how you like code anything.
Just say the most terrible things. You look like a fool, don't you, Jay? You look like a fool.
Would you like to drink my whiskey?
I'll drink your freaking. I'm gonna come over there and drink your damn milkshake, Jay. I will drink your milkshake.
Oh, I just caught that. So there was a couple of times where he drank other people's food or drinks to show his dominance, and that was the point with the milkshake too. It was like, I drank your milkshake.
Yep. And in that scene, so you know they're in the. It's interesting that he chose a bowling alley. I don't know. And you think there's anything to the
game, right? You think, oh, life's a game. It's all a game.
Yeah.
I won the game. I won. That's what he says. I won.
Yeah. Well, it's like, you know, the bowling balls are usually traditionally black with the pins being white or wooden. I think the pins are wood colored in this one. So it's kind of, you know, that the black ball bowling over the white pins of just, you know, destroying what's in front of it. And also, you know, the decadence of the house. Oh, you know, the house, you mentioned earlier you didn't know who he was based on. Part of the character apparently was based on Doheny, who was in kind of a mid-level oil baron in California who had this massive mansion. And I think there was some sort of maybe there was a murder at the actual mansion. And they shot this end scene at the Doheny mansion. So this is this is what's so cool about this scene is actually they didn't make this. This is that house. Oh, wow. And it's kind of decrepit and messed up, which shows the state of him internally, right? His house is disheveled. It's cavernous, but full of like rubble, basically. And he's drunk.
He had said at the beginning, I'm a family man. And now he's all alone. His house is not
except his butler. And then when HW comes and they have that final falling out,
right?
You notice he says, HW's like, I'd like to talk to you alone. And he goes, well, this is my closest associate. He's here. He hears everything. Yeah. So he always, Daniel, even though he says he wants to be alone, he always has his side guy. Remember that other dude that, you know, when I forget, he doesn't have a lot of lines.
To be on the train.
Mm-hmm. He's always got somebody with him that's his top guy. But the person
with him is an employee. It's never I mean, aside from HW at the beginning, everyone else ends up being just an employee that's around him.
Yeah. So he's paying these people, and they're there for personal gain. But it also shows, like, he didn't have to have a person with him at all these times. But he really, even though he says he wants to be alone, and he wants to get enough money to be alone, he doesn't want to be alone, which is why he lashes out at his son when his son says, look, I'm going to Mexico. I'm leaving you. And he sees this as the ultimate affront to him, is somebody leaving him. So it's almost like the manipulation of the business is this surrogate vehicle to get him some sort of a human companionship, which is what he at least craves deep down inside, to be, you know, a loving, real human being. You know, the desire, you know, the love for God reflects in the way we treat other people, the way we treat our family, the way we treat our spouses, the way we treat co-podcasters, co-streamers that you stream with, the way you treat maybe me, Jay, me.
I know.
No, but just stone face.
Let it out, man. Let it out.
Yeah. Jay, that's when you get vulnerable like that with Jay. When you get vulnerable with Jay like that, he actually literally is drinking your milkshake. He just consumes your emotional turmoil.
I want this to be a safe space where you can let it out. That's all.
Yeah. No, I'm not trying to fill that milkshake up for you. But yeah, no, he wants companionship. He wants people around him, but it's twisted. You know, the love is messed up. It's a distorted love. It's a messed up type of love. Which is why at the end scene, it's what is love, baby, don't hurt me. I thought that was a great song choice.
Strange Love by Depeche Mode. Strange Love.
Tainted love. That's that. After he smashes him with the I almost said
Bowling
pool
pin.
cue, the bowling pin. Why did I call pool cue? Yeah, he smashed him with the bowling pin, and then it's they sync up the last smash with those drums. Boom, boom, tainted love. Boom, boom, tainted love.
Yeah, that would have been really funny.
Well, cool. You get what
Yeah,
you want
that's-
to. You want to
that's
wrap
all
it
the
up
notes I
here.
got
You got
on
any other? That was a fun stream.
Yeah, that was fun. That's all I got on it.
Nice, dude. Nice. Yeah, that was a great movie.
I'm gonna re-upload this and basically just clip out all your comments. So
I'm gonna just clip out everything you said and re-upload the proper director's cut version of this.
yeah, the director's cut will be basically just me talking.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna actually send this to my people. We're gonna use AI to actually put like a real cool person over there instead of Jay.
Overlay a cool person overlay filter.
Yeah, we're gonna put like
They have a cool person filter.
yeah, we're gonna put some black rapper or something. You can bring some diversity to the stream. You know, that's like one of the problems with this movie is I mean you obviously didn't say this because you don't notice these things because of your heteronormative patriarchal bigotry. But yeah, it's all men in this movie. There's no real female characters. No, there's a lack of diversity, right?
No
Why
diversity
aren't we
on
need
the
more?
podcast. It's
Right?
a
Why
lot
don't
of-
we have more non-binary Indian immigrants? Right? Like, why don't we have any Pakistani non-binary characters?
Well,
in this
like
film?
your live streams. I mean, your live streams are all basically millennial bald white dudes. So where's the diversity hires here?
I'm actually transracial, to be honest. Yeah, you didn't know. You ain't know.
Oh,
You ain't know, dog. I'm like Sean. What's that food? What's that what's that wigger's name?
oh,
Like-
Sean King.
Sean Kang.
Sean Kang.
I'm Sean Kang. Kaiynge. Sean Kang. All right, bigots. Well, let me check if there's any more
I
super
think
chats.
you
We
are
got
the diversity hire on this channel.
yeah, no. Jay's my long hair diversity, my non-bald
I'm
diversity.
the
hire.
diversity hire on this channel.
Yes, let that mane out. Why do you have to hurt me like that? You did that just to hurt me. You let those locks down.
What can
just to
I
shame me.
identify as? I could identify as.
Can I identify as a freaking
I identify as a Jamaican.
tinfoil hat girl donated $5. Says I'm a little behind in the stream, so this may be out of context. If I remember correctly, Rockefellers funded the Schofield Bible and the Darby Rapture nonsense to push Christian Zionism. Jay may have more to say on this. I thought Rothschild funded the Schofield.
Yeah, I don't think it's Rockefellers. I mean, they were always funding liberal stuff, not any evangelical fundamentalist stuff. They were eventually opposed to that. So, but I think the Schofield Study Bible comes out of Oxford. It's still published by Oxford Press. So, to me, that suggests old line British money.
Word. Greg donated $11.12. Ooh, sending those esoteric, new age twin flame angel numbers. It's his angel numbers there. Thank you, Greg. I appreciate that. Green Fez donated £10. What is that? The E with 2 lines on it.
British money.
British money. What do you think you're? They did that just as a flex. Just as a flex. Let me see. Let me see if there's a. Did you even say any words on that? You didn't even say anything. Green Fez, thank you very much. Denise Marks donated $10. Says thanks, guys. Much love via YouTube. Thank you very much, Denise Marks.
Shout out to Carl, great granddaddy Karl Marx.
Karl Marx. That's right. No, she's Marks. J. She's undercover.
Classic name change.
Yeah, classic name change. Yeah, Jon Stewart style. We see you. We see you, Denise Marks. We see you. All right. Who else? Who you got any more super chats out there? All you bigots who are watching the stream, thank you so much. Make sure, I know all you are probably already subscribed to Mr. Jay Dyer's channel. There's a link to his channel down below. You can get over there. Make sure to become a subscriber at jaysanalysis.com. Hit up our sponsor. There we go. We got to shout out our lovely sponsor, chalk.com. Use the coupon code BIG53LIFE to get 53% off all subscriptions for life on the top quality adaptogens and natural supplements to help to balance your hormones, get your immune system functioning right how it's meant to function. All natural supplements, organic, some of them beyond organic and wild crafted, like the Tomcat 100 extract. you're trying to get that extra juice so that you can be setting your straw all the way across the room and drink up other people's milkshakes. You will get 53% more of other people's milkshakes. Every single business dealing you get, you will just suck up that seepage, the drainage, Eli. You will suck it up from the giant milkshake of the others around you, because you will be so chatted up on that Chad mode pre-workout. Use that coupon code BIG53LIFE, BIG53LIFE, to get 53% off all subscriptions for life. Every time you order, you will add 53% more length to Jay's hair. His hair will grow at a rate of 53% more every time you use that coupon code on subscriptions. For recurring subscriptions on the products at chalk.com, CHOQ.com is a link in the description. I don't know if I got any mods in the chat right now. The mod squad, I think the mod squad's absent today. Where's that? Let me see make sure I got a link up there so that you guys can hit them up at chalk.com. What else? Am I forgetting anything else? Anyway, yeah, I mean, I think it was really brave for him to write this whole film all around that one song, "My Milkshake Brings All the Boys to the Yard." I thought that just the concept of that was brave in today's Hollywood.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I don't even know what that song's about, but I'm gonna guess it's something dirty. Yeah, I mean, you would know.
It has to be.
You know a lot of the drug slang, a lot of the street slang, so you would probably know what all that is about. You were earlier. You were talking about blow something.
Oh, and you said you were gonna blow your nose, and then you put your head down like this, and you came up like this. You were like, ah! You like screamed into the mic, and you looked at me, and your eyes were all flared out.
Strange street slang terms that I don't know.
Yeah, you said, I'm gonna blow my nose, and I'm like,
Bloods, Crips, blow. I don't know what these terms mean.
Wow. Jay Dyer, everybody. Jay Dyer. Jay'sAnalysis.com. You can find more of this over there on Jay's channel. Next week we'll be back with another struggle session. Jay has blackmailed me into doing a weekly struggle session with him until one of us rage quits. We'll see who rage quits. But yeah, we are together. We're gonna rage quit this stream in unison right now. And all you bigots in the chat, thank you for sharing the videos and liking the videos and all of that. And we'll see you bigots next time.